Poor kid begged for bikers' leftovers behind a diner. By dawn, 400 bikes were at his orphanage. The first thing Noah learned about hunger was that it makes you quiet. Not polite. Quiet. Quiet like a shadow that knows it doesn't get a second chance. That night the rain came down in cold needles behind the Dixie Maple Diner, and Noah was already shaking, fingers dug into his sleeves as he waited for the back door to open. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you are watching this from. Because this little diner could have been in any town, off any highway, where people come to eat warm food and pretend the world outside doesn't exist. Noah kept his eyes on the thin line of light under the kitchen door. He didn't knock. He never knocked. Knocking meant you wanted something. Waiting meant you were trying not to be a problem. A delivery truck had splashed him earlier, soaking his shoes until they squished. The smell back here was a mix of fryer grease, sour mop water, and the metal stink of the dumpster. When the wind shifted, it carried out the clean, cruel perfume of bacon and coffee from inside, and Noah's stomach clenched like it was trying to fold itself in half. He was 12, but hunger made him look 9. His hair was too long, his hoodie too thin, and his hands were cracked from cold. In his pocket, he had a folded piece of paper and a half-broken pencil nub, something he checked even more often than his empty stomach, because the paper wasn't just paper. It was a list, names in tight, shaky writing, names he wrote down the second he heard them, before Mrs. Harlan could make him forget. Some names belonged to kids still inside. Some belonged to kids who were suddenly transferred and never mentioned again. Noah didn't know laws. He only knew this. If he didn't remember them, no one would. The back door swung open just enough to throw a rectangle of light onto the wet asphalt. Again? The cook's voice hit like a slap. Big man, red-faced, apron-stained dark. He didn't step out like the rain might infect him. I told you, kid, you show up here one more time, I'm calling the cops, you hear me? Noah lowered his chin. I'm not asking for money. Then what? You want a job? You want a free meal? The cook's eyes flicked down Noah's soaked shoes, his shivering knees. This isn't a shelter. This is a business. Noah swallowed. Just whatever's going out. Anything you were going to throw. The cook snorted. You're begging for garbage. Noah's stomach tightened at the word garbage because he'd eaten worse and thanked people for it. He held up his hands, palms open, like he was showing he had no weapon besides need. From the sliver of doorway, Noah caught glimpses of the kitchen, metal counters, steam, the hard shine of fluorescent lights. A waitress moved in the background, stacking pie plates. She noticed Noah for half a second, then looked away like noticing hurt. The cook looked past Noah into the dark lot. You got people out there with you? Someone making you do this? Noah's eyes flicked to the row of parked cars under the buzzing street lamp, then back down. No. That's right, the cook said, as if that settled something. No, because nobody's that pathetic on purpose. The door started to close. Noah's voice came out fast, thin. Please, just the leftovers. I can take it and go. I won't come back. The cook paused, irritation and something else fighting across his face. Then headlights swept the lot. 2 beams, then more, gliding in from the road like slow, predatory eyes. Engines rumbled, deep, heavy, not cars. The sound rolled into the diner's back lot and settled in Noah's chest. Motorcycles. Noah turned. 4 bikes at first, then 2 more behind them, dark paint and wet chrome, rain sliding off leather jackets. They parked near the side entrance. The cook's posture changed. He didn't like surprises behind his building. A tall biker swung off the first bike. Broad shoulders, gray beard, a ring on his finger that looked like it had seen fights. Another guy, younger, with a shaved head and a scar at the corner of his mouth, laughed as he pulled off his helmet. Smells like heaven, the younger one said. Kitchen's closing soon, the cook called, forcing a smile he didn't mean. Then you better move fast, the scarmouth said, not quite a threat, just something people treated like one. 2 more bikers dismounted. One had a braided beard and hands like wrenches. The other didn't speak at all, just looked around, checking the road, the door, the corners of the lot. Noah tried to slide back into the corner by the dumpster. Bikers didn't give food. That's what the older boys at the orphanage said. That's what Mrs. Harlan said when she wanted the kids to be scared of the road. But the tall biker's eyes found Noah anyway. Not like a cop's eyes, not like the cook's, just calm, like he was weighing a fact. The cook muttered, "Kid's trespassing, I'm handling it." The tall biker took 2 steps closer, boots splashing in shallow puddles. "You hungry?" he asked Noah. Noah's stomach answered with a low growl before he could. His cheeks burned. "I'm not trying to cause. I didn't ask what you were trying to do," the biker said. "I asked if you're hungry." Noah nodded once. The scar-mouthed biker snorted. "Everybody's hungry. What's your angle, kid?" "No angle," Noah said. "If there's leftovers, I can take them. I can go." The scar-mouthed biker smirked. Listen to him, like he's rehearsed. Noah didn't correct him. He was rehearsed. Every night, he practiced being small enough to survive. The tall biker's gaze didn't move. "Who else is hungry?" Noah hesitated. Saying it out loud felt dangerous. The cook exhaled hard. "There aren't leftovers for him. There's food for paying customers." The tall biker finally looked at the cook. "Then I'm paying." The cook blinked. "For what?" "For whatever you were going to throw away," the biker said. "Put it in a bag. Put it in 2 if you have to." One of the bikers pulled out a wallet and laid a couple bills on the counter just inside the door. No bargaining, no performance, just money. The cook's jaw worked. "That's not how this works." The biker's eyes stayed steady. "Then make it how it works." The waitress appeared behind the cook, holding a takeout bag like she'd already decided. She didn't look at the bikers. She looked at Noah, and her mouth tightened, like she was angry at the whole situation and didn't know where to aim it. "You want me to pack the end-of-night stuff?" she asked the cook, carefully neutral. The cook shot her a look. "Don't get involved." She lowered her eyes and started filling the bag anyway. Fries that had gone cold under a heat lamp, a burger that never got picked up, slices of toast that would have hit the trash in 5 minutes. Noah watched like he didn't trust his eyes. Food meant rules. Food meant punishment if you took too much. At the orphanage, it meant you learned to eat slowly so your stomach wouldn't cramp, and to smile so no one decided you were ungrateful. He took a step back anyway. "It's fine. I'll go." The tall biker lifted a hand, palm open, stopping him without touching him. "Where are you sleeping tonight?" Noah's mouth dried. That was the question you didn't answer. "Noah!" a voice barked. It wasn't from inside the diner. It came from the alley mouth, sharp and furious, like a leash being yanked. Noah's blood turned to ice. A figure stood at the far end of the lot under the dim light near the dumpsters behind the neighboring laundromat. Wide coat, hair pulled tight. Even from this distance, Noah recognized the walk, the way she held herself like she owned air. Mrs. Harlan. She wasn't supposed to be here. She never came out at night. The tall biker's gaze slid past Noah and locked onto the woman without a word. The quiet biker shifted his stance just slightly, like he was preparing without admitting it. "Mrs." Harlan took a step forward. "You think you can run off and steal?" Her voice carried across the wet asphalt. "You think I won't find you?" The cook blinked, confused. "Who?" "Noah," Mrs. Harlan snapped, ignoring everyone else. "Come here, now!" Noah's chest tightened. If he didn't go, she'd punish the little ones. She always did. He started to move, not toward her, just away, away from all eyes. His backpack strap, soaked and frayed, chose that moment to betray him. It tore with a soft rip. The bag hit the ground and spilled open, paper and a cheap plastic fork skittering across the asphalt, a few crusts of bread, a broken crayon, and the folded sheet Noah kept hidden, unfolding halfway in the rain. The tall biker bent down first, faster than Noah could grab it. On the paper were names, dozens of them, some crossed out, some circled. At the top, written in block letters with Noah's shaky pencil, "Kids who left and never came back." Rain still hissed on the asphalt when Mrs. Harlan's heels clicked closer, sharp as a warning. Noah didn't move at first. He couldn't. The list was half open on the ground, the pencil marks bleeding where the water hit them, and the tall biker had it now, 2 fingers holding the top edge like it weighed more than paper. Mrs. Harlan stopped 10 feet away, just outside the brightest spill of light from the kitchen door. She didn't look at the bikers. She looked at Noah like he was an object that had rolled under a couch. "Pick that up," she said. Noah's throat tightened. He started forward, but the scar-mouthed biker stepped sideways, blocking him without even turning it into a performance. The tall biker's voice was calm. "Who are you to him?" Mrs. Harlan's eyes finally lifted. She took in leather jackets, wet chrome, the way men like this stood like they didn't need permission to exist. Her expression changed fast, controlled, practiced, the smile of someone used to being believed. "I'm his guardian," she said. "He's from my home. He runs off. He lies. He steals food. I'm sure you don't want trouble with that." The cook behind the door cleared his throat like he wanted no part of any of it. The waitress kept her eyes on the bag she'd packed, knuckles white around the handles. The tall biker looked down at the paper again. "Guardian, huh?" Mrs. Harlan took a step forward, reaching for it. "Give me that." He didn't hand it over. Instead, he angled it slightly toward the light, reading the top line Noah had written in block letters. His eyes moved across the names. Some were crossed out. Some had little marks beside them. Dates, maybe, or notes. His jaw tightened in a way that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with calculation. Mrs. Harlan's smile sharpened. "That's a child's scribble. He writes nonsense because he wants attention." The tall biker lifted his gaze. "These kids, did they leave?" Mrs. Harlan's eyes didn't flicker. "Children get adopted. They get placed. That's how it works. Are you a social worker?" The scar-mouthed biker laughed, low. "Lady, you got a line for everything." Mrs. Harlan ignored him. Her attention went back to Noah, and the warmth drained out of her face like a switch being flipped. "Noah," she said, voice quiet now, dangerous in a different way. "Come here." Noah forced his feet to move. He reached for the paper again, but the tall biker held it up just out of his reach, not to keep it, but to stop Noah from grabbing it in panic, like he understood that grabbing it would look like guilt to anyone watching. The tall biker spoke to Noah, not Mrs. Harlan. "Did you write this?" Noah nodded once, eyes down. "Why?" Noah's lips parted, but no sound came out. 1,000 answers burned behind his teeth, none of them safe. Because if he said it, it would become real. Because if he said it out loud, Mrs. Harlan would make him pay in ways that didn't show bruises. Mrs. Harlan's voice cut in, too bright. Because he's dramatic. He wants pity. He's always been difficult. The waitress made a small sound, like she swallowed words. The cook shot her a look that said, "Don't." The tall biker turned slightly, just enough for his shoulder to face Mrs. Harlan. "If he's difficult, why's he out begging behind a diner at night?" Mrs. Harlan didn't blink. "He steals. He sneaks out. He's punished for it, and he does it again. Some children can't be grateful." The scar-mouthed biker tilted his head. "And the coughing kid in there? He steal too?" Mrs. Harlan's eyes snapped to him. "Excuse me?" He grinned like he was enjoying it, but his gaze was flat. "I'm just wondering how many rules you got for kids that don't eat." The tall biker lowered the paper and folded it once. Careful. He looked at Noah again. "Where's your home?" Noah's throat tightened. He could feel Mrs. Harlan's stare drilling into the side of his face. He could feel the weight of her future punishments lining up like dominoes. He made himself speak anyway, because the list was wet and half-ruined, and something inside him was screaming that this was the only moment he might ever get. "Saint," his voice cracked, "St. Margaret's." Mrs. Harlan's smile returned instantly. "There, St. Margaret's Children's Home. We do charity work. We take in the unwanted. We provide structure. Now, give me that paper." The tall biker held it out, not to her, to Noah. Noah hesitated, and the biker's voice dropped low, so only Noah could hear it over the rain and engines. "Keep it dry," he said, "and don't lose it again, or—" Noah's fingers closed around the paper like it was a life raft. Then Mrs. Harlan surged forward and seized Noah by the arm, hard. Her nails bit through his sleeve. Noah flinched, the way a dog flinches when it's learned the sequence. "Enough," she hissed, still smiling like she wasn't hurting him. "You embarrassed me." The tall biker's hand moved, just a fraction, like he might stop her. But he didn't. Not because he didn't care. Because he was looking at Noah's face, at the way the kid swallowed pain without making a sound, like it wasn't new, like it was routine. Mrs. Harlan yanked Noah toward the alley mouth. "We're leaving," the cook finally found his voice. "Ma'am, Stay out of it," Mrs. Harlan snapped, all sweetness gone. Then she turned back to the bikers and put the smile on again, like a mask. "Thank you for your concern, but he's under my care." The tall biker nodded once, slow. "What's your name?" Mrs. Harlan paused, just long enough for Noah to feel the squeeze tighten. Harlan, she said. Dorothy Harlan. The tall biker repeated it like he was placing it in a file. Dorothy Harlan. She pulled Noah into the darkness between buildings. A car door opened somewhere beyond the diner's back lot, an older minivan, engine already running. Noah stumbled as she shoved him forward. The scar-mouthed biker watched them go, rain dripping off his nose ring. "Boss," he said softly, "that kid ain't stealing." The tall biker didn't answer right away. He turned toward the quiet biker, the one who hadn't said a word since they pulled in. The quiet biker's eyes were locked on the alley like a sightline. The tall biker gave him a look, a decision without words. The quiet biker nodded once, barely visible. He moved first, stepping into the shadow by the diner's side wall, hood up, posture loose like he was just a guy taking a leak in the rain. The rest of the bikers stayed by the bikes, casual. No chase, no scene. Mrs. Harlan's minivan rolled out from behind the laundromat, tires hissing on wet pavement. Noah's face flashed in the passenger window for a split second, pale, eyes wide, then gone. The quiet biker swung onto his motorcycle without starting it right away. He waited, counting, letting the van get distance. When it turned out of the lot, he thumbed the ignition. The engine growled low, not loud, not a threat, just a shadow deciding to follow. The van took the service road behind the strip mall, then cut through a neighborhood where lawns were trimmed and porch lights were warm. Mrs. Harlan drove like someone who knew exactly where cameras were and where there weren't any. Twice she checked the mirror. Noah saw it, her eyes flicking, searching. The quiet biker stayed back, headlights off for a stretch, letting other cars slot between them. He didn't tail like a teenager in a movie. He floated in the traffic like he belonged there. The neighborhood changed slowly. The sidewalks cracked, the houses sagged, streetlights grew farther apart. Then the van turned onto a road lined with dead trees and chain-link fences. A sign appeared, freshly painted, white with gold letters. St. Margaret's Children's Home. Donations welcome. There were flower boxes under the sign, fake flowers, bright and cheerful in plastic. The front building looked like someone had tried hard to make it respectable. Clean siding, a flag on a pole, a little statue of an angel near the steps. But the quiet biker saw what the paint couldn't hide. Bars on the lower windows, a padlock on the side gate, and a security light that snapped on too fast like it was watching. The van rolled through the gate. It closed behind it with a heavy clang. The quiet biker slowed on the road and kept going, passing like he didn't care. He took the next turn, looped behind a row of trees in an empty lot, then killed his engine and coasted into the darkness. From there, he could see the building through branches. Mrs. Harlan hauled Noah out of the van by the same arm. Noah stumbled, shoes slipping on wet gravel. A door opened. A woman stepped out, older, thinner, wearing a cardigan like she was a grandmother, but her eyes were sharp and tired. "You found him," the woman said. Mrs. Harlan's voice carried in the rain. "Of course I found him. He went where he always goes." The other woman's gaze went to Noah's face. "He's going to get us reported." Mrs. Harlan smiled without humor. "He's going to learn." She dragged him inside. The door shut. A few seconds later, a light flicked on in a side room. Through a slit in the curtains, the quiet biker caught a glimpse. A narrow hallway, peeling paint, a line of hooks with identical coats, and a pantry door with a lock on it. Then, a sound cut through the rain. Coughing. Not a single cough. A deep, rattling fit that went on too long, a child's cough. A smaller figure appeared at an upstairs window, face pressed to the glass. The kid's eyes scanned the yard like they were looking for someone who might actually come. The quiet biker didn't move. He just watched, jaw tight, memorizing angles, gates, exits, the way the lights were set up, the timing of the security lamp. Inside, a muffled voice rose. Mrs. Harlan's. Then a sharp slap of sound, like a hand hitting a wall or a table. Noah's voice answered, too quiet to hear the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Apology. The kind you give even when you did nothing wrong. The quiet biker's hand curled around his phone, knuckles whitening, as the coughing upstairs turned into a weak whistling wheeze, and someone, some small someone, started to cry. The quiet biker didn't go closer. He didn't cut the fence. He didn't throw rocks at windows. He stayed in the dark until the lights inside St. Margaret's shifted into their late-night pattern. Hallway on, office lamp on, the rest dimmed like the building was pretending to sleep. Then he left the way he came, rolling his bike down the dirt edge of the empty lot with the engine off, boots brushing wet weeds. He didn't turn the ignition until he was 2 streets away. When he did, the sound was small under the rain, controlled. Back at the Dixie Maple, the others were already gone from the lot, not because they'd lost interest, because they didn't want to be remembered. The tall biker, everyone called him Bishop, even the ones who didn't go to church, sat in a booth near the back with the waitress's takeout bag between his elbows, like it was evidence. The cook hovered behind the counter, pretending to wipe the same spot over and over, listening. Bishop didn't touch the food. He didn't eat when the air tasted wrong. The scar-mouth biker, Reed, dropped into the booth opposite him and shook rain off his jacket. "That lady," Reed said, voice low, "ain't a guardian. She's a handler." Bishop's eyes stayed on the window. "You see her hurt him?" "I saw his face when she grabbed him," Reed said. "I don't need to see the bruise to know the bruise is there." Another biker slid in beside Reed, big guy with hands like tools named Tank. He tossed his helmet on the seat. "If we roll up to that place and start asking questions, sheriff will show up in 5 minutes with 6 cars and a smile, and we'll be the story." Bishop looked at him. "And if we do nothing?" Tank's jaw flexed. "Then the kid goes hungry again tomorrow, maybe worse." The waitress approached, hesitant. Are you looking for trouble?" she asked, and her voice tried to sound casual but failed. Bishop turned his head, gentle enough not to spook her. "We're looking for the truth," she swallowed. "That boy, he comes around sometimes, not every night. When he does, he's always careful, like he's afraid of being seen." Reed snorted quietly. "Well, he was seen tonight." The waitress slid a napkin onto the table like she needed something to do. "I called the number on the sign once," she admitted. "St. Margaret's. They said he wasn't theirs, said he was a runaway from somewhere else. And then he stopped coming for a while." Bishop's gaze sharpened. "You remember who you talked to?" She nodded. "A woman, smooth voice, like she was smiling through the phone. She said if I was giving him food, I was encouraging bad behavior." Reed leaned forward. "Did she say her name?" The waitress hesitated. "Dorothy. Dorothy Harlan." The cook finally spoke, voice rough. "That name means something around here." Bishop's eyes didn't move from the cook. "Meaning what?" The cook licked his lips. She's on boards, charity boards. She's always at church events. Local paper runs pictures of her handing out Thanksgiving turkeys. People like her," Tank muttered. "People like her are always loved right up until they're not." Bishop nodded once, slow, like he filed the cook's words away with Noah's list. "Thank you," he told the waitress, and his tone made it clear he meant it. The waitress stood there a second longer, eyes glossy. "If you do something," she said quietly, "don't make it worse for him." Bishop's voice dropped softer. "That's the whole point." She walked away. Bishop waited until she was behind the counter again. Then he looked at Reed and Tank. "We don't go in loud, not yet." Reed's eyes flashed. "Boss, we don't go in loud," Bishop repeated, and the room seemed to settle around his words. "Because loud gets kids moved, loud gets records cleaned, loud gets evidence burned." Tank rubbed his jaw. "So what do we do?" Bishop reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone that didn't look new. He scrolled, then tapped. "We start with a name." Reed leaned back. "You got someone?" Bishop's mouth tightened. "I got a few." He paused, then spoke like he was giving instructions to a crew that trusted him with their lives. "We're not rescuing a kid tonight, not without knowing how many kids are in there, who's connected, and how deep the town's hands are in it." Reed stared at him a beat. "And if that lady hurts him tonight?" Bishop met his eyes, and the answer was in the stillness. "Then we adjust." Tank nodded, grim. "Who's on the follow?" Bishop didn't answer out loud. He didn't have to. Everyone already knew the quiet biker was out there. Reed drummed fingers on the table. "So we wait for his call." Bishop nodded. "We wait. And while we wait, we dig." They left the diner in a loose, unremarkable line. No revving engines, no show. Just men disappearing into wet roads. The clubhouse wasn't a fortress. It wasn't some movie hideout with neon and skulls. It was an old warehouse behind an auto shop on the edge of town where the smell of oil never really left the walls. Inside, the air was warmer, and the fluorescent lights buzzed. A few bikes were already parked in a row like sleeping animals. Someone had a pot of coffee going. Someone else had a radio low in the corner, static between country songs. Bishop walked in and hung his jacket. The patch on the back, stitched, worn, meant something to people who understood. To everyone else, it was just a warning label. A younger guy, skinny, barely mid-20s, looked up from a table covered in paper maps and half-broken pens. "You're back early," Skinny said. "Kid," Reed replied. "Orphanage." Skinny's eyebrows jumped. "An actual orphanage?" Bishop didn't correct him yet. He just set Noah's paper list on the table and smoothed it with his palm. The pencil marks were smeared from rain, but the heading was still readable if you tried hard enough. "Kids who left and never came back." Skinny's face shifted from curiosity to something colder. "That's not normal." Tank leaned over and pointed at one of the names. He wrote these down, kids keeping track. Skinny swallowed. Why would a kid have to keep track? Because nobody else was. Bishop walked around the table. "Phones." Reed pulled his out. Tank did too. Skinny's hands moved faster than his mouth. Bishop pointed to the wall where an old corkboard held scraps of flyers, business cards, and faded photographs. "Anything about St. Margaret's?" Skinny shook his head. "That's charity territory, the kind you don't see on biker boards." Bishop nodded. "Then we build our own board." He made calls first, quiet ones, not to cops, not to town officials, to people who owed him. To people who hated Dorothy Harlan quietly. To people who'd seen things and never said them out loud. One call went to a lawyer who once needed a miracle and got it. Another went to a nurse who worked night shifts and heard the things nobody wanted recorded. Another went to a churchman who had stopped smiling when Dorothy walked into a room. Reed paced while Bishop talked, restless like a dog at the end of a leash. Tank leaned against the table, arms crossed, listening. After the third call, Bishop's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. No name, just a number. He answered without speaking. For a second there was only rain noise and faint static, like whoever called was still outside. Then the quiet biker's voice came through, low and steady. "Boss." Bishop's eyes didn't move. "Talk." "It's real," the quiet biker said. "Place is locked down, bars on windows, pantry's got a padlock, kids inside. I heard coughing. I saw a kid at the upstairs window." Reed stopped pacing instantly, every muscle going still. Tank's eyes narrowed. "How many?" "Couldn't count," the quiet biker said. "But more than a few. They keep the lights in patterns. Security lamp on a timer, gates chained." Bishop's thumb tapped the table once, rhythm like thought. "Dorothy Harlan there?" "Yeah," the quiet biker said. "She brought the boy back, dragged him, then went inside like she owned the place." Reed's voice came out sharp. "Did she hit him?" A pause. Not a long one, just enough to mean something. "I heard a slap," the quiet biker said. "Could have been Wall, could have been him. He apologized after." Silence swallowed the room. Bishop's eyes lowered to Noah's wet list. "Stay where you are," Bishop said into the phone. "Don't engage." "I know," the quiet biker replied. "But they're watching the road now, like they're expecting something." Bishop's jaw tightened. "That's because Dorothy Harlan saw us." Reed leaned forward, anger burning through his voice. "So we moved tonight." Bishop looked at Reed, and for the first time the calm cracked just enough to show the steel under it. "We moved smart." Tank held up his phone. "Boss, I pulled St. Margaret's online. They got a website, donation button, pictures of kids smiling. State certified. They got a county permit. This ain't some backyard operation." Skinny's fingers flew across a keyboard. "Found their filings," he said, eyes wide. "They're registered as a non-profit. They receive—" He paused like the number hurt to say, "They receive public funds, per child." Reed let out a bitter laugh. "So the kids are the product." Bishop's voice stayed even, but it went colder. "Keep going," Skinny scrolled. "Board members. Dorothy Harlan is director. Also, Reverend Thomas Wilkie. Also, Sheriff Clay Norton." The room changed. Tank's eyebrows rose. "Sheriff?" Reed's smile vanished. "That's why she walked into that diner like she could do whatever she wanted." Bishop stared at the screen. "If the sheriff's on the board, he's not enforcing laws there. He's protecting them." Skinny cleared his throat. "There's more." Look, inspection reports, they're perfect. Every year, no violations. Tank muttered. Perfect is fake. Bishop turned toward the wall, toward the old corkboard. Pin it, he told Skinny. Reed slammed his palm on the table. Boss, we can't wait for paperwork while that kid… Bishop raised a hand, stopping him. You want to save Noah? Bishop asked. Reed blinked. Yeah. You want to save the other kids? Bishop continued, voice low. Reed's mouth tightened. Yes. Then you don't do it in a way that gets them transferred tomorrow, Bishop said. You do it in a way that makes it impossible to hide. Tank nodded slowly. Witnesses. Bishop pointed at Noah's list. This kid's already trying to build a case with a pencil. We're going to give him something stronger. Reed's hands curled into fists. So what's the play? Bishop looked down at his phone again. First, we confirm how many kids are inside and if they're planning to move them. Second, we get proof that can't be laughed off as biker trouble. Third, he paused, eyes hard. Third, we make sure Dorothy Harlan can't touch that boy again without consequences. Skinny swallowed. How do you do that without walking into a trap? Bishop's gaze lifted. You do it with daylight, Reed scoffed. Daylight? Boss, it's midnight. Bishop didn't smile. Then we build the sunrise. He reached for his phone and started typing. Not one message, many. Names flashed on the screen. Other clubs, independent riders, veterans, guys who'd sworn off trouble but still hated bullies, men and women who could show up without needing to be asked twice. Tank watched him. You calling everybody? Bishop's eyes stayed on the phone. Not everybody, he said. Only the ones who understand one rule. Reed leaned in. What rule? Bishop's thumb hit send, again and again, the screen lighting his face like firelight. When kids disappear, he said, voice flat, you don't let the people responsible disappear with them. Outside, the rain eased into a thin mist. On the table, Noah's list lay drying at the edges, names still visible. And Bishop's phone buzzed again, another message coming in, another rider answering the call, then another, then 10 more. The clubhouse filled with the quiet sound of engines starting somewhere out in the dark, one by one, like distant thunder beginning to gather without anyone in town realizing what was about to roll in. Noah didn't sleep that night. Not really. At St. Margaret's, sleep was a rule, not a rest. You lay still. You kept your breathing quiet. You didn't move the springs in the bed frame. You didn't make the floorboards complain. If you did, the night monitor would swing the hallway door open and shine a flashlight right into your eyes like you were guilty of existing. Noah lay on his side, back to the wall, hoodie still damp from the rain. His arm throbbed where Mrs. Harlan's nails had dug in. He kept his fingers curled around the folded paper list under his pillow like it could vanish if he didn't hold it. Across the room, the coughing started again. It came from the far bed by the window, little Eli. 8 years old, too thin, ribs like the slats in the bed frame. His cough sounded like he was trying to push glass out of his lungs. Every few minutes he'd stop, wheeze, then cough harder like his body refused to give up. Noah stared at the dark ceiling. The room smelled like wet socks and cheap bleach. The heater didn't work right, so the air was always cold and the damp turned every cough into something worse. The door at the end of the hall creaked open. Footsteps. Soft, practiced. A flashlight beam swept under the crack of their door like a knife. Noah didn't blink. He'd learned that blinking could make tears show up, and tears made adults say you were being dramatic. The beam paused at Eli's bed. Eli coughed, loud this time, unable to hold it back. A shadow filled the doorway. Again, a woman's voice hissed. Not Mrs. Harlan. The other one, Miss Dottie. The one who liked to tell the kids she used to be a nurse, like that meant she knew what she was doing. Eli tried to sit up, already apologizing. I can't. Shut up, Ms. Dottie said. You wake everyone. You lose breakfast. Noah's stomach clenched at the word breakfast. Breakfast at St. Margaret's wasn't a meal. It was a privilege. Eli coughed again, smaller now, like he was trying to crush it down. Ms. Dottie's flashlight swung to Noah's bed. For a second, the beam caught Noah's eyes. His heart thumped once, hard. You, Ms. Dottie said, if I hear you again tonight, you're scrubbing toilets all day. Noah nodded, even though he hadn't made a sound. The door shut. The hallway light dimmed back down to the night pattern. Eli's coughing softened, like he was holding it inside his chest so nobody could take food away from him. Noah stayed awake until the first pale line of morning slid under the blinds. Then the bell rang. Not a bell like school. A bell like a factory. Metal, harsh, meant to move bodies. The dorm stirred. Kids rolled out of beds like they were weighted. Bare feet slapped cold floor. Someone shivered hard enough to shake the thin blanket off their shoulders. Noah tucked his list into the inside pocket of his hoodie and kept his face blank. Face blank meant less attention. Less attention meant safer. Downstairs, they lined up for breakfast. A tray of oatmeal so thin it looked like gray water. One slice of bread for each kid, unless you were on punishment. A jug of milk that tasted like it had been sitting too long. Mrs. Harlan stood at the end of the table in a clean sweater and pearls like a church lady. Her hair was perfect, her smile practiced. She held a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Good morning," she said brightly. "Remember, children, we are blessed." Nobody answered, not because they weren't grateful, because gratitude didn't change the portions. Mrs. Harlan's eyes found Noah instantly. She didn't need to point. She didn't need to raise her voice. She just smiled wider. "Noah," she said, "step forward." His stomach dropped. He stepped out of line. Mrs. Harlan lowered her voice so only he could hear. "You embarrassed me in front of strangers," she said softly. That was a choice. Noah stared at the floor. "I'm sorry." "You will be," she replied. Same soft tone. She tapped her clipboard. "No breakfast today, and after chores you'll come to the office. We'll talk about lying." Noah's throat burned, but he didn't protest. Protest meant the little ones got punished too. That was her favorite trick. He stepped back into line and moved on without a tray. Eli looked up at him with wide eyes. Noah forced himself to look away. If he looked too long, Eli might offer him food. If Eli offered, Mrs. Harlan would see. And Eli would lose his breakfast tomorrow too. After breakfast came chores, always chores. Noah scrubbed the bathroom floors with cold water and a cheap brush until his hands turned red. The bleach burned his nose. He kept his head down, listening to the building like a living thing. Doors opening, keys jangling, footsteps, voices. At around 10, he heard something that didn't fit. A printer. St. Margaret's didn't print much. Paper cost money. Paper left evidence. He froze with the brush in his hand, listening. The sound came from the office. Then he heard Mrs. Harlan's laugh, light, friendly, and a man's voice answering, deeper. Noah's heart began to pound. A man's voice in the office during the day meant one of two things, a donor or someone from the county. And county people meant everything had to look perfect. Noah kept scrubbing, but his ears stayed sharp. The voices drifted out when the office door opened. "I just want to make sure everything is orderly," the man said. "It always is," Mrs. Harlan replied. "Sheriff, you know me." Sheriff. Noah's brush paused. For a second the bathroom seemed to tilt. Sheriff Clay Norton was not someone kids here ever saw face to face. They heard the name like a threat. If you run, the sheriff will bring you back. If you talk, the sheriff won't believe you. If you steal, the sheriff will lock you up. Noah's mouth went dry. So the sheriff was here. And Mrs. Harlan was smiling at him like he was family. Noah scrubbed harder to cover the shaking in his hands. At noon, the kids got lunch, 2 slices of bologna on bread, no chips, no fruit. Noah got nothing again. But hunger wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was knowing he'd been seen behind the diner. Mrs. Harlan would make sure he understood what being seen cost. After lunch, Ms. Dottie came into the hallway and called his name. "Noah, office!" The other kids avoided looking at him. They'd learned that sympathy was dangerous here. Noah walked down the corridor with his heart hammering, passing framed photos of smiling kids that didn't live here anymore, passing a bulletin board with neat flyers about hope and blessings and community. He stopped outside the office door. Inside, he heard Mrs. Harlan's voice, gentle. "Come in." Noah stepped inside. The office smelled like perfume and paper. Mrs. Harlan sat behind her desk, clipboard beside her. Sheriff Norton sat in the chair near the window, hat in his lap, posture relaxed like he owned the building. Noah's entire body went cold. Mrs. Harlan smiled at him like he was her favorite. "Noah," she said, "tell the sheriff what you were doing last night." The sheriff's eyes settled on Noah. Not angry, not kind, interested. Noah felt the list in his hoodie pocket like a burning coal. He tried to speak, but his throat locked. Mrs. Harlan tilted her head, still smiling. "Come on," she said softly. "Don't be shy. Tell him how you like to run off and beg. Tell him how you like to make us look bad." Sheriff Norton leaned forward slightly. "That true, son?" he asked. Noah forced air into his lungs. His mouth opened. And before he could answer, the office phone rang. Mrs. Harlan's smile twitched. Annoyance flashed, just for a fraction. She picked it up. "St. Margaret's," she chirped. Her expression changed as she listened. Then she glanced at the sheriff. Quick, sharp. "Of course," she said into the phone. "We'll be ready." She hung up and looked at Noah like he was no longer the main problem. The sheriff stood, slow. "What is it?" he asked. Mrs. Harlan's voice stayed light, but her eyes were hard. "A donation pickup," she said. "A group wants to come by early, very early. They say they want to drop off food." Sheriff Norton's jaw tightened. "Who?" Mrs. Harlan stared at Noah as she answered, like she was promising him something without saying it out loud. "Bikers," she said. The sheriff didn't rush. He didn't need to. Men like Clay Norton moved slow on purpose, like speed was for people who weren't in control. He set his hat back on his head and walked to the office window, peering out through the blinds like the parking lot might already be full of leather and chrome. "What time?" he asked. Mrs. Harlan flipped open her clipboard, pretending she was just checking a schedule. "They said dawn, before the kids wake up." Sheriff Norton's mouth tightened. "That's not a donation, that's a message." Noah stood in the middle of the office like a chair nobody wanted. He kept his eyes down, but he listened hard. When grown-ups thought you were a problem, they talked around you like you were deaf. Mrs. Harlan's voice stayed sweet. "We accept donations from all kinds of people, Sheriff. You know that. It's what we do." The sheriff gave her a look that meant he wasn't fooled by the performance, even if the town was. "Dorothy," he said, lowering his voice, "if they show up here the wrong way, I don't care how pretty your newsletter is. This becomes a scene. Social services, press." Mrs. Harlan's smile didn't crack. "Then we make sure it isn't a scene." She looked at Noah, finally letting the softness drop. "And we make sure the children behave," she added. Noah's stomach knotted. He knew what behave meant here. It meant keep quiet. It meant say what you were told. It meant don't look at anyone too long. Sheriff Norton turned back to Noah. "You," he said, voice flat. "You talked to those men?" Noah swallowed. I didn't," Mrs. Harlan cut in smoothly. "He begged behind their diner. They probably felt sorry for him. He's good at that." Noah's fingers twitched inside his hoodie pocket where the list hid. His heart pounded so loud, he thought they could hear it. Sheriff Norton studied him a second longer, then straightened. "He runs again. You call me. Immediately." Mrs. Harlan nodded, innocent. "Of course." The sheriff walked out without looking back, boots heavy on the hallway floor. When the office door clicked shut behind him, Mrs. Harlan didn't move right away. She stayed sitting, hands folded, breathing slow. Then she stood and came around the desk. Noah backed up half a step without meaning to. The wall met him. Mrs. Harlan stopped close enough that Noah smelled her perfume, clean and expensive, like she'd never stood near a dumpster in her life. "I'm going to explain something," she said softly, "because you like to act stupid." Noah didn't answer. She reached out and pinched the front of his hoodie, right over his chest, and held him there like she was steadying him. "You don't bring strangers to our door," she whispered. "You don't make people curious. Curious people ask questions. Questions bring inspections." Her fingers tightened, twisting cloth until it hurt. "And inspections," she continued, "make my life difficult." Noah's voice came out tiny. "I didn't." Mrs. Harlan leaned in, smile gone completely now. "You did." Her eyes dropped to his hoodie pocket, and Noah felt it like a punch. She'd noticed the bulge. She'd noticed he was guarding something. "You have something," she said. Noah went still. Mrs. Harlan's tone turned almost conversational. "Take it out." Noah's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Mrs. Harlan sighed like she was tired of children. Then, in one fast movement, she shoved her hand into his hoodie pocket. Noah reacted without thinking, grabbing her wrist. His fingers locked hard, panic giving him strength. For a split second, they were frozen, her hand half in his pocket, his hand on her wrist, both of them staring at each other. Then Mrs. Harlan's face changed. Not anger, delight. Because now she could punish him for touching her. She yanked her wrist free and slapped him across the face so quickly Noah barely registered it as a hit. Just sound, sting, and the way his vision flashed white. He didn't cry. Crying made it last longer. Mrs. Harlan's voice stayed quiet. "Good," she murmured. "Now you remember. Hands to yourself." Noah's cheek burned. His eyes watered anyway. He stared at the floor, breathing through his nose. Mrs. Harlan reached into his pocket again. This time, Noah didn't stop her. He couldn't. Her fingers closed around the folded list and pulled it out like she was plucking a weed. Noah's chest went hollow. Mrs. Harlan unfolded the paper slowly, reading the heading first. The pencil smears from rain made some names hard to see, but enough were still legible. Kids who left and never came back. For the first time, real irritation crossed her face. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Noah's voice trembled. I wrote it." Mrs. Harlan laughed once, sharp. "You wrote it?" She shook her head like she was disappointed. "You little rat." Noah flinched at the word. The cook had used it too, behind the diner, like that word followed him wherever he went. Mrs. Harlan walked to the desk and opened a drawer. Noah saw what was inside: keys, a stapler, and a small metal box. She placed the list on the desk and took out a lighter. Noah's breath caught. "Please." Mrs. Harlan looked up at him as if he'd made a joke. "Please," she echoed. "You want to know what happens to lies here?" She flicked the lighter. A small blue flame appeared, steady. Noah's body moved before his mind could stop it. One step forward, his hands lifted, helpless. Mrs. Harlan's eyes sharpened. "Don't!" Noah froze, hands midair. Mrs. Harlan held the flame to the corner of the list. The paper curled, blackening. The smell hit the room: burnt pencil, burnt cheap paper, burnt hope. Noah stared, unable to breathe as the corner caught and the fire crept along the edge. Mrs. Harlan watched him watch it. She was enjoying the lesson. Then she pinched the burning corner between her fingers and shook it out into the metal box, letting the flame die inside like it was nothing. Only the corner had burned, enough to destroy names at the top, enough to make the list incomplete. Enough to make Noah feel like he'd failed. She slid the damaged paper into the metal box and closed it with a click. "That's what happens," she said softly, "when you try to keep secrets from me." Noah's throat tightened until it hurt. Mrs. Harlan walked back to him and tilted his chin up with 2 fingers so she could see his eyes. "Now," she said, "you're going to do exactly what I tell you when those bikers arrive." Noah's voice was hoarse. What do you want?" Mrs. Harlan smiled again, church smile back in place. "You're going to tell them you made it up," she said. "You're going to tell them you're a runaway, and we took you in, and you're grateful. You're going to make them feel foolish for caring." Noah swallowed hard. "And if I don't?" Mrs. Harlan's eyes went flat. "Then Eli doesn't get his medicine." Noah's stomach dropped. She leaned closer. "And I think you know he needs it. That cough? He won't last long without it." Noah's hands clenched at his sides. He could still hear Eli wheezing in the dorm, could still see the way Eli's shoulders shook when he tried not to cough. Mrs. Harlan patted Noah's cheek lightly, almost affectionate. "Good boy," she murmured. "You understand incentives." Then she opened the office door and called down the hall like nothing happened. "Noah will be in the kitchen today," she announced cheerfully. "He's earned extra work." Extra work meant being watched. Extra work meant being placed exactly where she could control him when the bikers came. Noah walked out of the office with his cheek burning and his pocket empty. In the kitchen, Ms. Dottie handed him a rag and pointed at the floor. "On your knees," she said. "Scrub." Noah scrubbed while his mind raced, heart hammering against his ribs. Because if the bikers came at dawn, Mrs. Harlan would put him in front of them like a prop. And if he lied the way she wanted, the bikers would leave. If he didn't, Eli would pay. A few hours later, as Noah dragged a mop bucket down the hallway, the front phone rang again. Ms. Dottie answered, listened, then went pale. She covered the receiver and hissed toward the office. "Dorothy, there's a man here, from the county. Says he needs to see the children's records. Today." Mrs. Harlan's voice floated back, sharp and controlled. What county? Ms. Dottie swallowed. Not ours. Noah's grip tightened on the mop handle. Mrs. Harlan stepped into the hallway, eyes hard now, and took the phone. Her smile was gone. Yes, she said into the receiver, voice polite but tight. This is Dorothy Harlan. She listened, then her eyes flicked to Noah like he'd somehow caused this too. And then she said the words that made Noah's blood run cold. No, sir, that won't be possible. By late afternoon, St. Margaret's had the kind of clean that wasn't for the kids. It was for outsiders. Ms. Dottie scrubbed fingerprints off the front glass door. 2 older boys were forced to rake the same patch of gravel until it looked neat. Mrs. Harlan moved through the building like a general in pearls, smiling at nothing, barking orders when she thought no one could hear. Noah was kept in the kitchen on purpose, not cooking, not eating. Just working where she could watch him, where he couldn't whisper to the smaller kids, where he couldn't slip into the dorm and tuck anything away. And every time he glanced toward the pantry, where he knew the medicine lived behind a padlock, Mrs. Harlan's voice floated in from the hallway, sweet as syrup. Eyes down, Noah. The county man she'd refused on the phone didn't go away. He came anyway. Noah saw him through the kitchen's small side window when his car rolled into the lot. Plain sedan, no lights, no show. A man in a button-down stepped out holding a folder. He walked up to the front door like he'd done this 100 times. Mrs. Harlan met him with her best smile. Noah couldn't hear their words, but he saw the way the man's posture stiffened when she blocked the doorway. Saw how he tried to angle his head to look inside, and how she stepped in front of him again, like she was shielding something precious. The man said something, lifting the folder. Mrs. Harlan answered with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Then Sheriff Norton's cruiser appeared. No sirens, just presence. The sheriff stepped out slowly, adjusting his belt, strolling up like he'd been invited for coffee. He put a hand on the county man's shoulder in a way that looked friendly from a distance and felt like a warning up close. The county man spoke again, sharper this time. Sheriff Norton shrugged once, casual, and pointed down the driveway like he was explaining where to park instead. The county man's jaw worked. He looked at the building, looked at the locked side gate, looked back at the sheriff. Then he got in his car and drove away. Noah's stomach knotted so hard it made him nauseous. The sheriff stayed. Mrs. Harlan's smile returned. She touched the sheriff's arm, guiding him inside like he was family, like he belonged here. Noah kept mopping, head down, while his mind spun with one thought. If the sheriff could make the county man leave, then no one official was coming to help. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever. Mrs. Harlan had said daylight. The bikers had said sunrise, and Mrs. Harlan had already prepared for that. Around dinner, she made a show of generosity. The kids got slightly thicker oatmeal. A single banana was sliced into thin coins and spread out across plates like it was a feast. Mrs. Harlan stood at the end of the tables and watched everyone eat as if she were watching her own investment being preserved. Eli's cough was worse. His cheeks were flushed, eyes watery. Noah watched him between bites he wasn't allowed to take. Mrs. Harlan had kept her promise, no breakfast for him, no lunch, and for dinner he received a cup of water. Incentives. After dinner, she called Noah into the hallway again. Coat, she said. Noah blinked. What? You're going back to that diner, she said, as if telling him to take out the trash. You're going to do what you do. You're going to be seen, and you're going to make sure they see you as pathetic. Noah's throat tightened. Why? Mrs. Harlan leaned in slightly, her smile thin. Because if they're planning to come at dawn, I want them to think you're unstable, she whispered. I want them to think you made everything up for attention. You're going to make them doubt their own eyes. Noah stared at her, trying to understand. Mrs. Harlan's eyes flicked toward the pantry door. Eli's medicine, she said softly. It's still locked up. It stays locked up unless you behave. Noah's stomach dropped. She held out a thin coat. Put it on. Noah took the coat with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else. He slid it over his hoodie, hiding the empty pocket where his list used to be. The burned corner of it sat in a metal box somewhere behind Mrs. Harlan's desk, like a trophy. Mrs. Dottie came down the hallway with keys. The side door opened. Outside, the sky was bruised purple and gray, heavy with cold. The air smelled like damp leaves and exhaust. Mrs. Harlan walked Noah to the minivan. "You will go," she said. "You will ask for leftovers. You will be seen. Then you will come right back." Noah swallowed. "And if I don't?" Mrs. Harlan smiled. "Then Eli coughs until he can't." She opened the passenger door and pushed him in. Ms. Dottie drove. Mrs. Harlan didn't come. She didn't need to. She had already planted the sheriff here like a guard dog. The minivan rolled out of St. Margaret's and onto the dark road. Noah watched the trees slide by and felt something shift inside him. Not bravery, not hope, just a hard, hollow decision. If he was going to be used as a tool to scare off help, then he had to find a way to signal the truth without giving Mrs. Harlan the satisfaction of watching him pay for it. They reached the Dixie Maple Diner just after 8. The parking lot was half full. Families inside, truckers, a couple teenagers sharing fries. The diner looked warm from the outside, like a lie made of light. Ms. Dottie parked around back near the dumpsters, exactly like last night. She didn't kill the engine. 10 minutes, she said. "If you make a scene, you'll regret it." Noah nodded once and stepped out into the cold. The back door to the diner was shut, but the smell came through anyway. Fried food and coffee and comfort. Noah's stomach twisted. He moved toward the dumpster like he belonged there, like the garbage was his place in the world. He didn't knock yet. He waited. Quiet. He heard laughter from inside the kitchen, plates clinking. Then he heard engines, not as many as last night, but deep, unmistakable. Noah's heart jumped, and he turned his head just enough to see them roll in. 2 bikes, then a third. They parked near the side entrance. Reed swung off one of them, Scar catching the light. Tank followed, heavy boots hitting the ground like punctuation. Bishop dismounted last. He didn't rush. He just looked around the lot like he was taking measurements. Noah's throat tightened. This was the moment Mrs. Harlan wanted, for him to look desperate and messy and unreliable, so the bikers would decide he was trouble. Noah forced himself to step forward. "Hey," he said, voice low. Reed saw him first. His eyes narrowed. "Kid." Tank's gaze dropped to Noah's coat the way he was shaking. "You okay?" Noah hesitated too long. Bishop's eyes were on him now, steady, reading. Noah remembered Mrs. Harlan's instructions like a hand around his throat. Lie. Make them doubt. He tried to do it. I just wanted food," Noah said, too fast. I was being stupid last night." Reed's expression hardened. "Stupid how?" Noah forced the words out. "The names, the paper. I made it up." I write stuff when I'm mad." Bishop didn't blink. "Where's the paper now?" Noah's mouth went dry. Saying she took it would get Eli punished. Saying I lost it would make Bishop stop believing him. Noah's eyes flicked toward the minivan idling in the shadows. He saw Ms. Dottie's silhouette in the driver's seat, watching, waiting. Noah swallowed. "I don't have it." Reed took a step closer, anger simmering. "They make you say that?" Noah's heart slammed. He kept his face blank. "No." Bishop's voice stayed calm, but it lowered. "Look at me, Noah." Noah couldn't. If he looked too long, something would break inside him and spill out, and he couldn't afford that. Bishop stepped closer anyway, not threatening, just present. "You hungry?" he asked again, same as last night. Noah nodded, almost against his will. Bishop's eyes shifted briefly, past Noah into the darkness where the minivan sat. He didn't stare long, just enough. Then he looked back at Noah. "Who brought you?" Noah's voice barely worked. "Just someone." Reed let out a humorless laugh. "Someone doesn't drive a minivan and watch you beg." Tank's fists clenched at his sides. "That's them, isn't it?" Noah didn't answer. Bishop tilted his head slightly, considering. "Walk with me," he said to Noah, "to the light." Noah froze. If he walked into the light with Bishop, Ms. Dottie would know he wasn't following instructions. She'd report it. Mrs. Harlan would punish Eli. But if he stayed in the dark, Bishop couldn't read him. Bishop couldn't help. Noah took one step, then another. He moved toward the diner's side entrance where a security light buzzed overhead, throwing harsh white across wet pavement. In that brightness, Noah couldn't hide the bruise blooming along his cheekbone. He couldn't hide the fingerprint marks on his arm. He couldn't hide the way his lips trembled when he tried to hold them still. Bishop saw everything. Reed saw it too, and something in his face snapped. You said nobody made you say that, Reed growled, so explain the bruise. Noah's voice failed. He stared at the ground. Bishop's hand lifted slowly, not touching Noah, just hovering near his shoulder, asking permission with his posture. If you're lying to protect someone, Bishop said softly, tell me who you're protecting. Noah's breath hitched. He thought of Eli coughing until he couldn't, thought of the pantry padlock, thought of Mrs. Harlan's calm smile when she threatened medicine like it was a toy. Noah's hands clenched into fists so tight his nails dug into his palms. He whispered, I can't. Bishop's eyes didn't soften. They hardened, not at Noah, at the situation. Then we make it so you can. Behind them, the diner's back door creaked open. The waitress from last night stepped out holding a small bag. She glanced at Noah, then at Bishop. You again, she murmured, and there was no judgment in it this time, just worry. Bishop nodded to her. Thank you. As Noah reached for the bag, a voice cut across the lot like a whip. There you are. Ms. Dottie had stepped out of the minivan. She walked fast, coat tight around her, eyes locked on Noah like he was property that had wandered too far. You have nerve, she snapped, coming back here after what you did. Noah's stomach dropped. He stepped back instinctively. Ms. Dottie reached for his arm. Reed moved first. He didn't shove her. He didn't hit her. He just stepped between her and Noah, close enough that she had to stop or bump into him. Don't touch him, Reed said, voice low. Ms. Dottie blinked, surprised to be blocked. Then her face tightened into a righteous mask. Excuse me, she said loudly, for the diner windows. This child is a runaway. He belongs to St. Margaret's. He steals. He lies. He causes trouble. Bishop's voice stayed calm. He looks like he's been handled. Ms. Dottie's laugh was sharp. Oh, please, he does this for attention. He wrote a list of fake names last night like it was some dramatic story. Noah's breath caught. The list. She'd said it out loud. Bishop's eyes narrowed a fraction. A list, he repeated. Ms. Dottie realized too late she'd confirmed it existed. She recovered quickly, lifting her chin. Yes, a stupid list. Mrs. Harlan took it away. Because it was nonsense. Noah's heart pounded. Mrs. Harlan took it away. That was the truth, spoken by Ms. Dottie like a boast. Bishop's gaze locked on Noah. She took it away, he said softly, and you're here because she sent you. Noah's lips parted. No sound came out. Ms. Dottie lunged to grab Noah's wrist. Tank stepped in, big body blocking her path like a wall. Lady, Tank said, voice quiet and dangerous without needing to rise, walk back to your van. Ms. Dottie's eyes flashed. You can't keep him. He's under our care. Sheriff Norton knows. Bishop's voice cut in, still calm. Sheriff Norton's on the board, isn't he? Ms. Dottie froze for half a second. Half a second was enough. Bishop turned slightly, looking toward the diner windows where people were now watching, faces pressed close. Noah, Bishop said, so the kid had to answer, or at least hear. How many kids are at St. Margaret's? Noah's throat tightened. Ms. Dottie snapped, Don't answer that. Noah stared at the wet ground, mind racing, hearing Mrs. Harlan's voice, seeing Eli's pale face. Then, Bishop said quietly, If you don't tell me, they'll move them before dawn. Noah's blood ran cold. Move them, transfer, like the names on his list. Noah lifted his head, eyes wide. They talked about vans, he whispered, and the words came out before he could stop them. They said, early. Ms. Dottie's face went white with rage. You little... Bishop's hand lifted again, this time pointing, past Ms. Dottie toward the minivan's open door. Get in, Bishop said to her, voice flat. Go tell Dorothy Harlan she's out of time. Ms. Dottie's lips trembled. You don't know who you're messing with, Reed smiled without humor. We know exactly. Ms. Dottie backed away, eyes darting to the diner windows, then to the bikers' faces, realizing the lot had turned into an audience. She spun and marched back to the van, slamming the door hard enough to rattle it. The minivan's tires squealed as it pulled out. Noah watched it go, chest heaving. The waitress stepped closer, holding the bag out. Here, she said softly. Noah took it with shaking hands, but he couldn't bring himself to open it. Bishop crouched slightly so he wasn't towering over Noah. Listen to me, he said. You did the right thing. Noah's voice cracked. Eli. Bishop's eyes sharpened. Eli is sick. Noah nodded fast. They have medicine. They lock it. They said if I talk, he won't get it. Reed's jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped in his cheek. Tank muttered, "That's it." Bishop stood, gaze cutting toward the highway. "How long to St. Margaret's from here?" he asked. Noah swallowed. 15 minutes. Bishop pulled out his phone. His thumb moved once, twice, messages firing out. Reed leaned in. "Boss, you want us to roll now?" Bishop looked at Noah. "No," he said, "not now." Noah's heart sank. Bishop continued, voice low. "Now we do something they can't erase." He turned to Reed. "Get Skinny on the line. Tell him to contact the nurse. Tell him to contact the lawyer. Tell him to contact anyone who can show up at dawn with a badge, a camera, or both." Reed's eyes burned. "And us?" Bishop looked toward the road again, like he could already hear distant engines. "We gather," he said. "We don't storm. We surround." Noah's breath caught. "Surround?" Bishop nodded once. "So nobody gets moved. So nobody disappears." Noah clutched the bag of food like it might anchor him to reality. "They'll hurt Eli," he whispered. Bishop's face didn't soften. It sharpened. "Then we get there before they do." He looked down at Noah one last time. "Can you lead us?" he asked. Noah nodded, terrified. Bishop's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Messages arriving fast. Replies stacking. One word came through from multiple numbers like a drum beat. "On my way." Bishop looked up, eyes on the darkening sky. "Good," he said. And somewhere far off on the highway, Noah heard it. Low, distant building. Not thunder. Engines, a lot of them. They didn't ride straight to St. Margaret's, not yet. Bishop made Noah sit inside the diner first, under light, with witnesses, with the waitress watching like she'd decided she wasn't looking away anymore. Reed stood by the side window, eyes tracking the lot. Tank posted at the back door like a boulder that learned how to breathe. Noah's hands shook as he opened the bag. Fries, half a burger, toast. The smell hit him so hard it made his eyes sting. "Eat," Bishop said. Noah took a bite and almost gagged, not because it was bad, but because his stomach wasn't used to food arriving without punishment. He forced it down anyway, chewing fast like the meal might be taken back. Bishop watched him for a moment, then looked at the waitress. "What's your name?" "Lena," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes kept flicking toward Noah like she was measuring how much damage the world had already done. Bishop nodded. "Lena, can you do me a favor?" She hesitated. "Depends." He didn't smile. "If a minivan comes back, I want it on camera, plates, face, anything." Lena's mouth tightened. "You want me to film?" "I want you to be a witness," Bishop said. Something in that phrasing changed her posture. "Okay," she said. "I can do that." Reed leaned in. "Boss, phones are lighting up. Riders are coming in hot." Bishop nodded once. "Not hot, controlled." Tank grunted. "Controlled don't save kids if they move them tonight." Bishop's eyes stayed on Noah. Noah said 15 minutes. That means if they're planning vans at dawn, they'll stage them before dawn. "We need proof before they can rewrite the story." Noah swallowed another bite, forced himself to speak through the tightness in his throat. They already talked about vans. I heard it. I heard Mrs. Harlan say, transfer." Reed's jaw twitched. Transfer. Like inventory. Bishop's phone buzzed again. He glanced down, then slid it across the table so Reed could see. A message from Skinny. Lawyer answered. Nurse answered. "County clerk won't talk on phone. Says come in person." Bishop's thumb tapped the table once. "Good." Tank frowned. "Come in person where?" "County office," Bishop said. 15 minutes the other direction." Reed's eyes narrowed. "We leaving the kid?" Bishop shook his head. "We take him with us." Noah's stomach dropped. "What?" Bishop leaned slightly forward, voice low enough it felt like a promise and a warning at the same time. "If we leave you alone, they snatch you. If we bring you, we keep you visible. We keep you alive." Noah's fingers tightened around the paper napkin. "But Eli, we're not forgetting Eli," Bishop said. "We're making sure we can get Eli out without a judge saying, no cause." Reed exhaled through his nose. "That clerk better have something." Bishop stood. "He will." They moved fast but not frantic. Reed paid for the food. Tank left a tip bigger than the meal cost. Lena watched, confused, like she hadn't expected bikers to act like men trying to do the right thing instead of men looking for trouble. Outside, the rain had thinned to a mist. More bikes were arriving, one by one, rolling into the lot without revving, headlights cutting the dark, engines idling low like restrained thunder. Noah stared at them as Bishop guided him toward the biggest bike. "How many?" Noah whispered. Bishop didn't look back. "Enough." Noah climbed onto the back of Tank's bike because Tank had the widest seat and the steadiest posture. Tank didn't talk much, but when he handed Noah an extra helmet, his voice came out rough and certain. "Hold on," Tank said, "and if you feel like you're gonna fall off, you yell. Got it?" Noah nodded, throat tight. They rode out in a small formation, not a parade. Just enough bikes to look like a group, not enough to trigger every cop in town. The county building sat behind the courthouse, a squat brick rectangle with fluorescent lighting and a flagpole out front. It looked closed, but one side door had a light on above it, like someone was working late or pretending they weren't. Bishop parked across the street out of the main lot's cameras. "Reed, Tank, stay with Noah. Nobody touches the kid. Nobody talks to him alone," he said, and his eyes made the last part absolute. Reed nodded once. Tank didn't nod. He just shifted to stand in front of Noah like a wall. Bishop and Skinny, who'd arrived on a smaller bike, hood up, crossed the street and knocked on the lit side door. After a moment, it opened a crack. A woman's face appeared, tired and wary. "We're closed." Bishop lifted both hands slightly, empty. "Ma'am, we're not here to cause trouble. We need records." Her eyes flicked to his jacket. "You think wearing that is going to make me help you?" Bishop's voice stayed calm. "No. I think the kid outside is going to make you help." The woman hesitated. Bishop leaned in just enough. "St. Margaret's Children's Home." Her expression changed instantly, like someone had said a name she'd tried not to think about. "Who are you?" she asked. "Someone who saw a boy begging behind a diner," Bishop said, "and then saw the sheriff show up to make a county man leave." Her eyes hardened. "You saw that?" Bishop nodded. The woman opened the door wider. "Come inside," she said. Then she added quickly, "Just you, not all of you." Skinny stepped in with Bishop. The door shut behind them. Inside, the building smelled like stale coffee and paper. The woman led them down a hall to a small office with filing cabinets and a desk buried under folders. She didn't sit. "You want records?" she said. "What exactly?" Bishop didn't waste time. "How many kids are officially registered at St. Margaret's? How many were registered last year? Inspection history, funding, any transfers?" The woman's mouth tightened. "That's not public?" Bishop's eyes didn't move. "Then it's private corruption." She flinched slightly, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a key ring. "Name," she said. "Dorothy Harlan," Bishop answered. "Sheriff Clay Norton." The woman's jaw clenched. "Of course." Skinny stared. "You know them." "I know their paperwork," she snapped, "and I know how fast my phone rings when someone asks questions." Bishop's voice softened just enough to land. "A kid made a list of names, kids who were transferred and never came back." That did it. The woman's shoulders sagged like she'd been holding something heavy for too long. "How old is the kid?" 12, Bishop said. She looked at Skinny. "Lock the door," she said. Skinny froze. "What?" "Lock it," she repeated. Skinny locked it. The woman moved to a filing cabinet and opened it, flipping through folders quickly. "St. Margaret's is clean," she said, bitterness thick in the word. "They pass every inspection, perfect reports, neat numbers." Bishop didn't blink. "Perfect is fake." The woman nodded sharply. "Perfect is protected." She pulled out a folder with a gold sticker and slapped it on the desk. "This is their funding allocation, per child, monthly." Skinny leaned in. "How much?" The woman named a number, and Noah could have heard it through the wall if he'd been inside. It wasn't just money, it was motive. Then she flipped to another page. "These are the kids officially registered right now." Bishop leaned forward. "How many?" She tapped the list. 24. Bishop's eyes narrowed. "Noah says more than a few. He hears coughing upstairs." "That building can hold more than 24. The woman swallowed, then pulled another sheet from deeper in the folder, one she'd tried not to show at first. "That's because this is the last submitted roster," she admitted. "It's 3 months old." Skinny's voice came out tight. So where's the current roster? The woman's eyes flicked to the ceiling as if the answer was there. Not filed, she said. Or filed somewhere that doesn't belong to me. Bishop's voice went colder. How many transfers in the past 6 months? The woman flipped pages. Her finger traced lines. Then she stopped. Her face went still. Skinny's heart seemed to pause in his throat. What? The woman looked up at Bishop. 6 emergency transfers, she said. No receiving facility listed, no caseworker name, just blank. Bishop's jaw tightened. 6 kids. The woman nodded, voice faint. 6 names that officially went nowhere. Skinny swallowed hard. That's impossible. Not if someone is covering, Bishop said. He leaned closer. Who signs their inspections? The woman flipped to the inspection section. It's always the same contractor, she said. A private compliance service. Bishop's eyes narrowed. Address? She gave it. Skinny's fingers flew on his phone, pulling it up. That address is a P.O. box, Skinny said. The woman let out a humorless breath. Like I said, perfect. Bishop stood up straight. I need copies. The woman hesitated. If I print these, the system logs it. Bishop held her gaze. Then don't print, photograph, send to a private email, or hand it to our lawyer. The woman stared at him, weighing risk versus conscience. Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out an old disposable camera. No, not disposable. A cheap digital point-and-shoot like something from years ago. No cloud, she murmured, almost to herself. No sync. She started taking photos of the pages. Skinny watched, then asked, Why are you helping us? The woman's mouth tightened. Because I saw the county guy you mentioned, she said. He came to my office last week shaking. He said he tried to inspect them and got warned off, and then he stopped talking. Bishop's voice was low. Where is he now? The woman's hands paused. He's on leave. On leave, Bishop repeated. She nodded, eyes hard. After he filed a complaint. Silence filled the room. Bishop's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A message from the nurse. I'm in. I can be there at dawn. If there's a sick child, I need access. Get me there. Bishop typed back one line. You will have access. Then he looked at the woman. One more thing, he said. Can you pull the contact list for their board? The woman swallowed. Yes. She opened another drawer, pulled a thin sheet and slid it across the desk like it burned her fingers. Names, numbers, emails. Bishop's eyes scanned until they landed on one. Reverend Thomas Wilkie. He looked up. Where's his church? The woman told him. Bishop nodded once. Good. Skinny's phone buzzed. He checked it and went pale. Boss? He said quietly. Noah's been sitting outside. What if... Bishop's eyes sharpened. We don't leave him out there longer than necessary. They moved fast, gathering the proof, photographs, notes, the board list. When they stepped outside, Reed and Tank were still there. Noah stood between them under the streetlight, helmet in hand, trying to look brave and failing. And across the street, parked at the end of the block like it had been there the whole time, was Sheriff Norton's cruiser. Engine running, watching. Reed's hand flexed. He followed us. Tank's voice came out low, or he was already waiting. Noah's stomach dropped. He stared at the cruiser, then at Bishop. He knows, Noah whispered. Bishop's face stayed calm, but his eyes turned to steel. Yeah, he said softly. He knows. The cruiser's driver's side door opened. Sheriff Norton stepped out, slow, adjusting his belt, hat low, and started walking toward them with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. And behind him, another car turned the corner, unmarked, headlights off until the last second. Bishop didn't move. He just watched them approach. Because now it wasn't just about an orphanage. It was about whether the town was going to let a kid speak, or bury him before dawn. Sheriff Clay Norton walked like he'd already decided how this ended. His cruiser idled at the curb, engine humming, headlights washing the wet street in a dull white. The unmarked car behind him stayed back with its lights off like it didn't want to be remembered. Noah stood frozen between Reed and Tank, helmet clutched to his chest like it could stop a bullet. He'd seen the sheriff before, only at a distance, only in pictures on flyers, only in warnings. Up close, Norton looked worse. Not because he was scary, because he was calm. Calm meant the system was on his side. Norton stopped a few feet away, hands resting casually near his belt. His eyes went straight to Noah first, Like that was the real point of this walk. "Well, there he is," the sheriff said, voice friendly enough for cameras, hard enough for the kid to hear the threat underneath. "Noah." Noah's throat tightened. He didn't answer. Bishop stepped half a pace forward, not confrontational, just present. A line in the road the sheriff had to acknowledge. "Evening, Sheriff," Bishop said. Norton finally looked at Bishop, smile widening as if they were old friends. "Bishop, right?" he said. "I heard you boys were in town." Bishop didn't react to the familiarity. "We're passing through." "Passing through," Norton repeated, glancing at the other bikes parked down the block. "And yet you're hanging around the county annex after hours with a kid from St. Margaret's." Noah felt Tank shift behind him like a mountain repositioning. Reed's hand hovered near his jacket pocket, not for a weapon, just instinct. Bishop held Norton's gaze. "Kid's hungry." Norton's smile didn't change. "And you're feeding him. How noble." His eyes slid to the county building door, then back. "You boys have no business in there." "We knocked," Bishop said. "A clerk let us in." Norton's smile turned sharper. "A clerk made a mistake." He took one slow step closer, lowering his voice just enough to make it personal. "Let me save you some trouble. St. Margaret's is a respected home. Dorothy Harlan is a respected woman. This town doesn't take kindly to outsiders stirring up ugly rumors." Bishop's voice stayed even. "Rumors don't cough upstairs." For the first time, Norton's smile twitched, just a fraction. His eyes flicked to Noah again, and Noah felt it like a hand around the back of his neck. Norton bent slightly at the waist, talking to Noah like he was the reasonable adult in the conversation. "Noah," he said gently, "you know you're not supposed to run off. You know Dorothy worries." Noah stared at the sheriff's boots. His tongue felt stuck to the roof of his mouth. Norton's voice softened more. "Come on, son, let's go home. We'll get you warm. We'll get you fed." Bishop didn't move. "He's staying with us." Norton straightened, smile still there but colder now. "That's not how it works." Reed laughed once, humorless. "Funny. That's what the county inspector probably said too." Norton's gaze snapped to Reed. The smile stayed, but the friendliness drained out. "You want to keep talking like that? I can give you a ride to a cell and we can talk in there." Tank's voice rumbled, low. "You touch the kid, and every person in that diner is going to have a real interesting story to tell." Norton glanced toward the diner windows. He saw the faces watching now, people who hadn't been here 5 minutes ago. A woman holding her phone up. A couple older men in baseball caps staring hard, curiosity thickening into concern. Witnesses. Norton didn't like witnesses. He exhaled slowly, recalibrating. "Nobody's touching anyone," he said, louder now for the street. "I'm just trying to get a runaway child back where he belongs." Then Bishop did something small that changed the temperature. He pulled out his phone and held it casually at chest height, camera pointed, not shoved in the sheriff's face. Just recording. Norton's eyes narrowed. "You recording me?" Bishop's voice stayed calm. "I record anything that might need remembering." The sheriff stared at the phone for one beat too long. Then, the unmarked car's passenger door opened. A man stepped out, plain clothes, no badge visible. He didn't walk toward them fast. He angled wide like he was positioning. Norton didn't look back at him. He didn't need to. They moved like practice. Norton dropped his voice again, aimed only at Bishop. "You take this kid and you're kidnapping. You understand me?" Bishop didn't blink. "We're protecting a child." Norton's smile returned, but it was empty. "From who? A charity director?" Noah's heart hammered. He could feel the proof Bishop had gathered, photos, notes, like invisible weight in the air. But proof didn't matter if the sheriff decided to break them before dawn. Bishop's eyes flicked to Noah. "Get on Tank's bike," he said quietly. Noah's breath caught. "What?" "Now," Bishop said, still calm. Tank guided Noah back, hands gentle but firm, placing the helmet on Noah's head like armor. Reed moved too, shifting to block Norton's line of sight to Noah. Norton's jaw tightened. "Don't do that." Bishop kept his phone up. "We're leaving," he said. "You can arrest us later if you want. Right now, you're not taking him." Norton's smile vanished completely. For the first time, his voice turned flat and dangerous. "Noah," he said, "if you get on that bike, you're choosing trouble. And when trouble comes, Dorothy won't be able to save you from it." Noah froze with one foot near Tank's peg. His mind flashed to Eli, to the pantry padlock, to Mrs. Harlan's whisper, incentives. Then Bishop's voice cut through, low and steady. "If you go back tonight," Bishop said to Noah, "they move the kids before dawn. You heard it yourself." Noah's foot trembled. Norton took one step forward, and Reed stepped with him, matching pace, blocking him without touching. "Back up," Reed said quietly. Norton's eyes burned. "You're making a mistake." Bishop's voice stayed almost bored. "Mistake is letting children vanish under emergency transfers." That word made the sheriff's eyes flicker again. And in that flicker, Noah understood something. The sheriff wasn't here to rescue him. He was here to control the story. Noah swung his leg over and climbed onto Tank's bike. Tank's posture settled around him, steady. "Hold tight," Tank murmured. Bishop looked at Norton, phone still recording. "We'll be at St. Margaret's at dawn," he said, "with witnesses." Norton's lips curled. "You won't get through the gate." Bishop's expression didn't change. "Then we don't need to." He turned slightly, signaling the group. Engines started, 1, 2, then more down the block. Low, restrained growls that made the street feel suddenly smaller. Norton's eyes tracked them, calculating. He wasn't afraid of a fight. He was afraid of what a crowd did to his control. Bishop swung onto his bike last. He didn't look away from the sheriff until his helmet was on. Then they rolled out, slow, deliberate, not fleeing. Norton stood in the road, watching them go, and Noah could feel the sheriff stare on his back like heat. They didn't head straight for the orphanage. They headed for the one place Dorothy Harlan couldn't silence with a smile. Reverend Wilkie's church. The building sat on a corner with a white steeple in a gravel lot. Lights were off except for one window near the office. Someone inside, late. Someone praying or pretending. Bishop parked at the curb and killed his engine. Reed looked over. "Boss?" Bishop stared at the dark church doors. "If Dorothy's got the sheriff," he said, "then we get the thing Dorothy can't control." Tank frowned. "What's that?" Bishop's voice was quiet. "Her image," Noah swallowed. "Why the church?" Bishop looked at Noah, eyes hard. "Because the town will forgive a sheriff," he said, "but it won't forgive a preacher who lies for a child-hungry house." He swung off the bike and walked toward the office door. Skinny moved with him, phone in hand, ready. Bishop knocked once. Inside, footsteps approached. The door opened a crack. A man's face appeared, older, neat hair, collar unbuttoned, eyes sharp even in low light. "Can I help you?" Reverend Wilkie asked, voice polite, cautious. Bishop didn't waste a second. "Yes," he said. "You can tell us why your name is on St. Margaret's board while kids inside are starving." The Reverend's expression froze. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Wilkie's eyes slid past Bishop, past the bikes, past Noah on Tank's seat, and his voice dropped, barely audible, like the truth was too dangerous to say at full volume. "Not here," he whispered. "If Dorothy finds out you came to me, she'll move them tonight." Reverend Wilkie didn't open the door any wider. He kept his body in the gap like the church itself needed guarding. Bishop held up his phone, not recording this time, just showing he had it. "Then talk fast," Bishop said, "because she already tried to move one kid tonight." Wilkie's eyes flicked to Noah on Tank's bike. Noah sat stiff, helmet on, hands gripping the sides of the seat like he'd fall off if he let go. The Reverend swallowed like he tasted shame. "I can't do this outside," Wilkie whispered. "Not with the street." Reed's voice came from behind, low. "You got two choices, preacher. Talk now, or the only people talking at dawn are the ones who planned it." Wilkie flinched at Reed's tone, but he didn't argue. He opened the door wider, just enough for Bishop and Skinny to step in. Then he shut it quickly behind them and slid the lock. Inside, the air smelled like old wood and lemon polish. The office was small, desk, Bible, a framed photo of Wilkie shaking hands with Dorothy Harlan at some fundraiser. The photo made Noah's stomach twist just looking through the doorway. Wilkie didn't offer seats. He stood in the center of the room, hands clasped like he was praying for a lie to become true. Bishop didn't sit either. "You're on the board," he said. "You sign off on their image, you fundraise, you vouch." Wilkie's jaw worked. "It's not what you think." Bishop's gaze didn't soften. "Kids are hungry." Wilkie's eyes darted away. "Dorothy told me they had behavioral issues, that the state reduced funding. that some children refused to eat unless it was junk food. Skinny let out a bitter laugh. Yeah? Kids are picky when they're starving. Wilkie stiffened. Watch your mouth. Bishop's voice stayed even. 6 emergency transfers, no receiving facility listed. You know about those? The Reverend went still. That stillness was the answer. Bishop stepped closer, slow. You know where they went. Wilkie's throat bobbed. I know what Dorothy told me. And what did Dorothy tell you? Bishop asked. Wilkie's voice dropped. She said a private partner facility takes the difficult ones, a program. She said it keeps them from infecting the others with, he stopped, embarrassed by the word. With bad influence. Skinny leaned forward. Name the facility. Wilkie shook his head quickly. I don't have a name. I never saw paperwork. Dorothy said if I asked too much, I would hurt the mission. Bishop's eyes narrowed. So you didn't ask? Wilkie's face flushed. I tried, once. She smiled and told me I was a man of faith and didn't need to drown in details. And then, he paused, voice tightening. And then Sheriff Norton called me the next day to ask if I was doing okay. That landed like a punch. Bishop's jaw tightened. He checked on you. Wilkie nodded, miserable. It wasn't a check. It was a warning. Silence filled the office. Outside, a bike engine idled low. Tank staying ready, Reed staying alert, Noah sitting like a kid who didn't know whether the next hour would save his friends or kill them. Bishop pulled out his phone again, but he didn't point it at Wilkie. He opened a photo, one of the county documents the clerk had allowed them to capture. He turned the screen so the Reverend could see it. This is what protection looks like, Bishop said. Neat numbers, perfect inspections, blank transfers. You're part of the smile over the rot. Wilkie stared at the screen. His hands trembled slightly. I didn't know, he whispered, then corrected himself, voice breaking. I didn't want to know. Bishop let that sit for half a second. Then, do you want to help now? Wilkie's eyes lifted. How? Bishop's voice was low, controlled. You're going to call Dorothy Harlan right now, and you're going to tell her you heard bikers are coming at dawn with a nurse and a lawyer and cameras. You're going to tell her the town is already talking. Wilkie paled. That will make her move them tonight. Bishop nodded once. Exactly. Wilkie blinked. What? Skinny's eyes narrowed. Boss, Bishop cut him off gently, never taking his gaze off Wilkie. She's already planning to move them before daylight. We need her to rush. People rushing make mistakes. Mistakes leave proof. Wilkie's mouth opened, closed. You're asking me to bait her. I'm asking you to save children, Bishop said. Wilkie swallowed hard. If she suspects me, she already owns you, Bishop replied. You're deciding if you want to stay owned. For a long moment, the Reverend didn't move. Then he walked to his desk, picked up his phone with shaking fingers and scrolled. Bishop nodded once. Put it on speaker. Wilkie hesitated. Bishop's eyes hardened. Speaker. Wilkie tapped the button. The line rang. Once, twice. No answer. Wilkie's face tightened. It's late. Bishop leaned slightly closer. Call again. Wilkie called again. This time, Dorothy answered instantly, like she'd been sitting with the phone in her hand. Thomas? Dorothy Harlan's voice came through sweet and tight. What is it? Wilkie's throat bobbed. He glanced at Bishop, then stared at the floor like he couldn't bear to look anyone in the eye. Dorothy, he said, voice unsteady. I heard there are bikers planning to come by at dawn. A beat of silence. Then Dorothy's voice, still sweet, but the sugar sharpened. Who told you that? Wilkie swallowed. People are talking. They're saying they'll bring a nurse, a lawyer, cameras. They're saying they have a child with them who's telling stories. Another beat. Then Dorothy laughed softly, too softly. Stories, she echoed. Children tell stories. Wilkie forced himself to continue. Dorothy, you should be careful. If this becomes public... Dorothy's voice snapped cold for the first time, losing the mask. Thomas, are you calling to warn me or to accuse me? Wilkie froze. Bishop leaned in, voice barely a breath, feeding him words. Say you want to protect the mission. Wilkie's voice trembled. I'm trying to protect the mission. Dorothy exhaled through her nose. Good. Then listen to me. If anyone comes here, it will be handled. The sheriff is aware. Bishop's eyes narrowed. Wilkie's voice cracked. Handled how? Dorothy paused, then her tone went bright again, like she'd stepped back into her church shoes. I have contingency plans. We are not helpless. Bishop spoke quietly now, for the phone to catch it, but not loud enough to sound like a threat. Ask her about the vans. Wilkie's mouth went dry. He licked his lips. Dorothy, are you planning to move the children? Silence. A full, heavy silence. Then Dorothy's voice returned, smooth as glass. Thomas, she said softly, why would you ask me that? Wilkie couldn't answer. Dorothy continued, still soft. You sound nervous. Are you with someone? Wilkie's eyes flicked up, terrified. Bishop held his gaze. Don't flinch, Dorothy's voice sharpened. Thomas, are you with someone? Wilkie's fingers tightened around the phone. No. Dorothy's laugh came again, and this time it was pure control. Then I suggest you go back to bed, she said, and pray you haven't just inserted yourself into adult matters. Her line went dead. Wilkie stared at the phone like it had burned him. Oh, God, he whispered. Bishop was already moving. He grabbed his helmet from the chair by the door. She's moving them, he said flatly. Skinny's voice came out tight. Tonight. Bishop nodded. Tonight. They stepped out of the church office fast. Outside, Reed was waiting, eyes sharp. Boss? Bishop's voice cut through the mist. They're moving the kids, now. Noah's stomach dropped. Eli, he whispered, and the words sounded like a plea. Tank's posture changed instantly, less relaxed, more ready. Where are we going? Bishop swung onto his bike. We don't storm, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. We intercept. Reed frowned. Intercept what? Bishop looked at Noah. They need vans. They need a route. They need to avoid witnesses. Noah, he said, when they move kids, where do they go first? Noah's brain raced. He saw the driveway, the chained gate, the service road behind the strip mall, the way Mrs. Harlan drove like she knew where cameras were. He swallowed hard. There's a back road, he said, behind the old feed store. They use it when the sheriff comes. Bishop nodded once. Lead. Tank's engine growled. Reed's bike started. More bikes down the street responded like a chain reaction, rumble building, riders who'd been staging quietly now rolling in, forming up without chaos. Noah clung to Tank as they pulled out, the night air cutting through him. They rode toward St. Margaret's not in a straight line, but like men trying to catch something that wanted to slip away. Bikes splitting, some taking the main road, others cutting through side streets to cover exits. And as they approached the area near the old feed store, Noah saw headlights ahead. Not one pair, multiple. Vans. 2 white vans turning onto the back road, moving slow, lights low, like they thought darkness made them invisible. Reed's voice came through a headset, tight. Boss, visual on vans. Bishop's reply was calm, deadly. Don't touch them. Don't stop them yet. Get plates. Get drivers. Stay visible enough they know they're seen. Noah's heart slammed. He could see shapes through the van windows, movement, shadows, kids. Tank's voice rumbled under his helmet. You seeing that, kid? Noah couldn't speak. The vans rolled forward, and then one of them slowed, like the driver had spotted the bikes fanning out ahead. For a second, the van's brake lights glowed red in the mist. Then the driver did the last thing Noah expected. He punched it. The van surged forward, accelerating down the back road, away from the orphanage, away from the town lights, toward nothing but dark fields and trees. And Bishop's voice came in, cold and certain. Now, he said, we follow. The vans tore down the back road like they'd practiced it. Their headlights were kept low, angled toward the gravel instead of the sky. The lead van hugged the shoulder, tires spitting wet stones into the ditch. The second followed close, tight enough to draft, tight enough that if the first made a turn, the second could copy it without thinking. Bishop didn't chase like a kid on a dirt bike. He let them run. He spread the riders. 2 bikes drifted left onto the parallel farm lane to keep the vans boxed in without ever touching them. Another pair fell back a quarter mile, keeping the scene wide enough that any dash cam, any porch camera, any sluchiny vididel would capture the truth. Bikes weren't attacking. Bikes were witnessing. Noah clung to Tank, helmet rattling slightly as the road bucked under them. The cold air sliced through the vents, drying the tears he didn't remember making. Through the lead van's rear windows, Noah saw movement again. Small silhouettes, heads shifting, an arm lifting and dropping like someone was being pushed down. "No," Noah whispered, but the word vanished into the wind. Tank's voice came low, more to himself than to Noah. "Yeah, we see it." A mile down, the road narrowed between two tree lines. No lights, no houses, only the pale smear of mist over fields and the black shapes of pines. That's where the lead van tried to lose them. The driver slammed the brakes just enough to make the second van close in, then cut hard right onto a dirt access path that wasn't on most maps, just a strip of mud leading toward an old industrial spur line. Bishop anticipated it. He didn't need maps. He needed patterns. "Noah," Bishop's voice crackled through Reed's headset line. "Where does that path go?" Noah's brain fought through panic. He pictured the area the older boys had talked about in whispers. The place nobody went because there were no stores and no lights. A place where trucks used to load grain when the mill still ran. It goes behind the old mill," Noah managed. "There's a loading lot, a fence, half broken. It connects back to the highway." Bishop didn't hesitate. "Copy." The bikes didn't surge in. They didn't swarm the van like a movie. They let it commit. Two riders peeled off and took the highway access ahead, positioning like chess pieces, not brawlers. Reed stayed midline with Bishop, keeping the lead van in sight without getting close enough to be accused of forcing it off the road. Tank held steady, protecting Noah's body from the wind and the violence of acceleration. The dirt path shook them like a punishment. Mud sprayed up, the vans fishtailed, tires fighting for grip, but the drivers knew this route. They'd done it before. Noah felt that knowledge like a sickness. They've done it before. The path opened into a wide gravel lot behind the old mill. A skeletal building loomed, rusted corrugated metal, broken windows, weeds as tall as knees. A chain-link fence curled in places where trucks had pushed through years ago. The lead van slowed. Noah expected it to keep going, to shoot for the highway and vanish. Instead, it stopped. Right in the open lot, brake lights glowed red through mist. The second van rolled in behind it and stopped too. For half a second, everything went still except engines idling and the hiss of cold air. Then, a side door on the lead van slid open. A man stepped out. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He wore a dark jacket and a knit cap pulled low. His posture was casual, like he'd walked out of a gas station. But Noah recognized the way he moved, confident, practiced, the way adults moved when they knew no one would question them. He raised a hand, not to wave, but to signal. From the shadows near the mill, another vehicle rolled forward, the unmarked car from earlier. Headlights off until the last moment, then flicked on, flooding the lot with white. Sheriff Norton stepped out. He didn't look surprised to see the bikes. He looked annoyed, like this was an inconvenience that should have ended at the county annex. Noah's stomach fell through him. The sheriff knew the route. The sheriff knew the lot. The sheriff was here because this was the plan. Tank's body tightened under Noah's grip. Reed's voice crackled, furious but controlled. "Boss, sheriff's on scene." Bishop's reply came instantly. "Nobody touches anyone. Cameras up." Phones lifted across the line of riders. Not hidden, not sneaky. Plain, obvious recording. Bishop rolled his bike forward slowly and stopped at a respectful distance, far enough to show restraint, close enough to be heard. Reed and Tank flanked, creating a shallow arc. More bikes arrived behind, not screaming in, just forming a perimeter. The sheriff walked toward Bishop with a smile that didn't belong on his face out here in the dark. "Evening again," Norton called, voice loud enough to carry. "You boys sure are committed to your little charity project." Bishop didn't take the bait. He kept his phone visible. "Sheriff," he said, "there are children in those vans." Norton's smile widened. "Children being transported to appropriate care." Noah's throat tightened. Appropriate care. That was the phrase Mrs. Harlan used when she wanted a bruise to sound like discipline. Bishop's gaze flicked to the vans, then back. "Appropriate care has a receiving facility listed," Bishop said, "and a caseworker present." Norton shrugged like paperwork was a joke. "Emergency situations don't always wait for forms." Reed's laugh was sharp. "Emergency? You mean emergency? Like the 6 transfers with no destination on record?" The sheriff's eyes snapped to Reed, cold for a flicker. Then the smile returned. "You've been digging," he said. That's cute. Bishop kept his voice calm. Open the vans? Norton's smile thinned. No. Tank shifted slightly and Noah felt the movement like a quake. Sheriff, Tank said, voice low. You're standing in a lot behind an abandoned mill at night with kids in locked vans. How do you want this to look on the internet? Norton's eyes flicked across the phones. He hated that part. He hated not controlling the frame. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as if that would make it private. You keep filming, he told Bishop, and I'll have you all on charges by sunrise. Bishop didn't move. By sunrise, he repeated. Funny you mentioned sunrise. Norton's jaw flexed. Then the side door on the second van slid open. A woman stepped out. Dorothy Harlan. Pearls even out here. Coat buttoned, hair perfect, like she'd dressed for a committee meeting, not a midnight child transfer. She walked toward the group with her smile already in place. My goodness, Dorothy called, voice bright and falsely warm. What is all this? I thought this was a misunderstanding. Noah's chest tightened so hard he could barely breathe. Dorothy's eyes found him immediately, like a laser. For a second, the smile faltered, just enough to show teeth. Then she looked at the phones and fixed her face. Everyone, she said, spreading her hands, please don't be alarmed. These are simply supplies, a late-night delivery. The children are not in danger. Bishop's voice stayed flat. Then open the vans and let them step out. Dorothy laughed lightly, as if Bishop had made a silly suggestion. No, she said, because you're frightening them. Reed took one step forward. Lady, what's frightening is moving kids in the dark with the sheriff running escort. Dorothy's eyes flashed. Sheriff Norton is here to ensure everyone is safe, she said, then turned her gaze toward the diner phones, toward the imagined audience. These men are harassing a charitable organization. Noah's stomach twisted. She was building the story in real time. Bishop didn't argue the narrative. He changed the ground under it. He pointed his phone toward the vans and raised his voice just enough. If there are no children in those vans, he said, you won't mind proving it. Dorothy held her smile. I mind, she said, sweet as poison, because you have no right. Bishop nodded slightly. Then the public will decide. Norton's smile vanished. Public doesn't decide, he snapped, and the flash of anger showed the truth underneath. Then he caught himself, putting the mask back on. He turned to the unmarked car and gestured. The plainclothes man stepped forward and placed a hand on his hip, near where a concealed weapon might sit. Not drawing, just reminding. The lot felt suddenly smaller. Noah heard a small sound from inside the lead van, muffled like someone trying not to cry. His heart shattered at it. He looked at Dorothy without meaning to. Just 1 second. Dorothy's eyes locked on him. Her expression didn't say fear. It said, I will punish you later. Noah's breath hitched. Bishop noticed the look. He stepped slightly to block Dorothy's line of sight to Noah, just enough to break the threat. Sheriff, Bishop said, you want to arrest somebody? Arrest me. But you're not taking those vans anywhere until we verify what's inside. Norton's eyes narrowed. And who's we? Bishop didn't answer with a name. He answered with a sound. From the highway, far off, engines began to rise. Not one, many. A rolling growl that built and layered, echoing off the mill's dead walls like thunder that had learned how to steer. Dorothy's smile finally cracked. Norton's head turned toward the sound. His jaw tightened as he realized what was coming. Lights appeared at the edge of the lot, headlights in a line, then more behind them, then more, pouring in from the access road and the highway, cut like a river of white. Bikes, dozens at first, then far more. They rolled in slow, controlled, filling the open space, surrounding the vans not aggressively but completely. No gaps, no easy escape. Riders dismounted and stood with phones up, faces forward, posture calm. Witnesses. A wall of witnesses. Noah stared, stunned, as the lot transformed into a circle. Bishop didn't look back. He just spoke to Norton, voice quiet now because he didn't need volume anymore. This is why we said dawn, Bishop told him, because by dawn, this isn't your story. Dorothy's eyes scanned the crowd, calculating, and Noah saw something new behind her mask, not anger, panic, because panic meant mistakes. And then, from inside the second van, a small fist hit the window twice, soft but desperate. Tank's hand tightened on Noah's leg like an anchor. Reed's voice was almost a growl. "Boss, kids inside, they're locked." Bishop stepped forward one pace, phone still recording, and pointed at the sheriff and Dorothy in the same frame. "Open the doors," he said, "right now." Dorothy's smile returned too fast. "Absolutely not." Norton's eyes flicked from the bikes to the vans to the phones. He was trapped between control and exposure. He took a breath, then raised his voice with forced calm. "Everyone needs to step back," he announced. "This is an official transport." A new voice cut through from the crowd, sharp and professional. "Sheriff Norton." A woman pushed forward between two bikes, mid-40s, medical bag slung over her shoulder, ID badge visible on a lanyard. Her eyes went straight to the vans. "I'm a registered nurse," she said loudly. "I was contacted about a sick child at St. Margaret's. I need access now." Dorothy's mouth opened to deny. The nurse didn't let her. "If there are children in those vehicles," she continued, "they are under my duty of care the moment I'm informed of potential medical distress. Denying access makes you liable." Norton's face tightened. "Who contacted you?" The nurse lifted her phone. "A lawyer," she said, "and the child's name is Eli." Noah's lungs seized. Eli. They said his name out loud. It was real now, in public, in front of cameras. Dorothy's eyes flashed toward Noah again, venomous, but the crowd was too thick. She couldn't reach him. She couldn't even threaten him without being seen. Norton tried to regain ground. "Ma'am, step back." The nurse didn't step back. "Open the van," she said, and her voice had no fear in it. "Or I call State Health Services and report obstruction, tonight, on record." Bishop spoke without raising his voice. "Do it," he told the nurse, and his phone caught it. The nurse lifted her phone higher and began to dial. Norton looked at Dorothy. Dorothy looked at the vans. The plainclothes man shifted, uncertain. For the first time, Noah saw it. The moment the system hesitated because too many eyes were on it. Norton's jaw flexed. He walked to the lead van, hand tight on his belt, and rapped the side with his knuckles like he was annoyed at the metal. Then he spoke to the driver, low. The driver's head nodded once. The side door slid open, and the first thing Noah heard was not a child's voice. It was a cough, deep, ragged, too big for a small body, followed by a wheeze that made the nurse move instantly, already stepping forward, already reaching for her bag as if her hands knew what her heart feared. The van door slid open with a shudder, and the sound that spilled out wasn't talking. It was breathing, broken, wet, desperate. The nurse pushed forward immediately, palms out, voice sharp and professional. "Step back. Give me space. Now." Two riders shifted without a word, opening a clean lane. Not aggressive, controlled, like the whole crowd had practiced being a wall that could also become a hallway. Inside the van, kids were packed onto bench seats, huddled in hoodies and thin blankets, eyes wide, faces gray in the harsh light. Someone had tried to keep them quiet. There were crumpled snack wrappers on the floor like a bribe, and a roll of duct tape sitting in the door pocket like it belonged there. Noah's stomach turned. Eli was near the front, slumped against the side panel. His cheeks were flushed, lips pale, each inhale a battle. He tried to cough and only managed a rasp. Noah made a sound without meaning to, half sob, half breath. Tank's hand held him steady. "I got you," Tank murmured, like Noah might jump off the bike and shatter. The nurse climbed up into the van fast, kneeling in the narrow aisle. "Hey, sweetheart," she said to Eli, tone shifting from command to comfort in one heartbeat. "I'm here. What's your name?" Eli's eyes fluttered. His voice was a whisper. "Eli." The nurse's jaw tightened. She checked his breathing, pressed fingers to his wrist, looked into his eyes. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small device and a vial. "We're past wait and see," she said loudly enough for every camera to catch. "This kid needs treatment now." Dorothy Harlan stood near the second van, smile glued back onto her face like paint overwrought. "This is all very dramatic," she called. "He has allergies. We were taking him to a clinic." Bishop didn't look at her. He looked at Sheriff Norton. "A clinic with no paperwork," Bishop said, "behind an abandoned mill, at night." Norton's expression was locked up tight, like he was swallowing anger. "You got your nurse," he snapped. "Now back off. Transport continues." Reed's laugh was short and ugly. "Transport continues to where, Sheriff? Name the receiving facility. Say it on camera." Norton's eyes flicked to the phones, dozens of them, all pointed, all unblinking. He didn't answer because he couldn't answer. Dorothy stepped forward, voice bright, for the audience. "These men are intimidating staff and frightening children," she said. "Sheriff, please remove them." The plainclothes man shifted closer, hand still hovering near his hip like a reminder. Dorothy had moved the pieces, but the board had changed. Bishop lifted his phone higher, framing Dorothy and the sheriff together. "You said there were no children in the vans," Bishop said. "You said it was supplies." Dorothy's smile tightened. "I said people were misunderstanding." Bishop nodded slowly. "Then explain the kids." Dorothy's voice stayed smooth. "They're being relocated for their own safety." "For their own safety," Reed repeated. "From what? Breakfast?" Dorothy's eyes flashed. "From men like you," she snapped, then caught herself and forced the smile back on. "From chaos." The nurse's head popped out of the van doorway, eyes blazing. "Chaos is denying medicine to a child with respiratory distress," she said. "Who is responsible for his medication access?" Dorothy opened her mouth. The nurse didn't let her. "Answer," she demanded, "because I'm writing a report tonight." Norton stepped in, trying to reclaim control. "Ma'am, you're overstepping. This is a law matter." The nurse turned on him. "No, Sheriff," she said loud. "This is a child health matter, and the moment I say neglect, it becomes a state matter. So don't tell me I'm overstepping while you're standing in the dark next to locked vans full of kids." A ripple moved through the crowd. Anger, yes, but more than that. Certainty. The kind that came when everyone saw the same truth at the same time. Noah couldn't stop staring. Eli was right there, real, alive. And for the first time, someone was touching him with care instead of control. The nurse fitted the device to Eli's face, started treatment. Eli's chest rose and fell hard, then a fraction easier. Noah's hands shook against Tank's jacket. Bishop turned slightly, speaking into the ring of phones so there was no confusion. "Everyone keep recording," he said. "No shouting, no touching. Let them hang themselves with words." Dorothy's eyes narrowed at that. She didn't like Bishop because he wasn't playing her game. She stepped toward Noah, trying to regain her weapon, fear. "Noah," she called, voice soft and poisonous, as if she were concerned. "Come here, sweetheart. You're scared. I understand. You can come back with me and we'll forget all this." Noah's entire body tensed. Tank shifted, putting his shoulder between Noah and Dorothy without moving forward. Reed stepped slightly, blocking Dorothy's direct line. Dorothy's smile wavered. "Look at him," she told the crowd. "He's confused. He's been manipulated." Bishop's voice cut in, calm. "Ask him what happens when he talks." Dorothy's eyes snapped to Bishop. "Excuse me?" Bishop didn't repeat himself to Dorothy. He spoke to Noah. "Noah," he said, not loud but clear enough for phones to capture. "Tell the truth." "What did she threaten?" Noah's throat locked. His mind flashed to the metal box, the burned list corner, Eli's medicine, the slap, and the worst part, how easy it was for Dorothy to smile while doing it. Noah swallowed hard, his voice cracked. She said, "If I talked, Eli wouldn't get his medicine." A low sound rolled through the riders, not shouting. A collective inhale that turned into anger. Dorothy's smile froze. "That's a lie," she said too quickly. "That's ridiculous." Bishop didn't argue. He turned his phone slightly so Dorothy's face stayed framed. "Then you won't mind opening the pantry," he said. "Right now, on camera. Show us the medicine. Show us the logs. Show us it was accessible." Dorothy blinked. 1 beat, 2 beats. Norton stepped in fast. "We're not going back to the facility," he snapped. "This is enough. The kids are being transferred." "To where?" Reed demanded. Norton's eyes went hard. "To a partner program." Bishop's voice stayed flat. "Name it." Norton didn't, because he couldn't. Dorothy tried to pivot, voice rising into that charity cadence. "This is harassment. These men are—" A kid inside the van spoke up suddenly, voice thin and shaking. "It's true." Everyone froze. A small girl, maybe 9, leaned forward into the doorway light. Her hair was uneven like someone had cut it fast. Her eyes were huge. "She locks the food," the girl whispered. "She locks the medicine. She says we have to earn it." Dorothy's face went white under the smile. Norton's head snapped toward the van. "Sit down," he barked. The nurse looked up sharply. "Don't talk to her like that," she snapped, then turned back to the girl, gentler. "Honey, what's your name?" "Marisol," the girl said, barely audible. The nurse nodded. "Marisol, you're safe right now. Do you understand?" Marisol shook her head, tears spilling. "No, we're not. They move us. They move the ones who talk." That sentence hit the lot like a gunshot. Not loud, final. Bishop's eyes narrowed. "Who moves you?" he asked, careful, letting her answer in her own words. Marisol's lip trembled. She glanced at Norton, fear, and then at Dorothy. Worse fear. "The sheriff," she whispered. "Sometimes." Norton's face hardened into something ugly. "That's enough." He stepped forward, hand rising, as if to close the van door and end the words. And that was the moment Bishop's lawyer arrived. A black SUV rolled into the edge of the lot, slowing, stopping where cameras could see it. A man in a suit stepped out, phone already up, voice already recording. "I'm attorney Daniel Klein," he called loud and clear. "I'm here representing multiple witnesses and a minor child. Sheriff Norton, you are now on notice that any attempt to remove these children without verified placement will be treated as unlawful detention and obstruction." Dorothy's eyes darted. Norton's jaw clenched. The lawyer kept moving, not rushing, walking straight toward the vans like he belonged there. "I have documentation," he said, holding up a folder. "State funding discrepancies, unfiled transfer records, and multiple reports of medical neglect." Norton's voice rose. "You can't," the lawyer cut him off. "I can," he said, "and I will. Right now. On record. With this many cameras." Dorothy's mouth opened, searching for a spin. She didn't find one fast enough, because the nurse had just finished Eli's first treatment cycle, and Eli took a breath that didn't rattle as hard. Noah's chest caved with relief. Then Eli opened his eyes and looked straight at Noah, and in a voice so small it should have been nothing, Eli whispered something that changed everything. "She said they're taking us to the water." Noah went cold. Bishop's face tightened instantly. "To the water," he repeated, voice low. The nurse looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" Eli swallowed, eyes glassy. "The river. The place where we don't come back." Dorothy's head snapped toward the van, eyes wild for the first time. And Sheriff Clay Norton, took one fast step toward the open door like he had to shut that sentence back inside before it could spread. But the cameras had already heard it. Sheriff Norton moved like the sentence had teeth. He took that quick step toward the van door, hand rising to slide it shut to end the moment before it became permanent. Dorothy's face had gone tight and pale, her smile gone, her eyes darting like she was already building a new lie. But there were too many phones up now, too many angles, too many witnesses who had heard the words the same way. "They're taking us to the water." Bishop didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He lifted his phone higher, framing Norton's reach for the door. "Don't," Bishop said, calm and flat. Norton froze for half a heartbeat. In that half-beat, the nurse leaned forward, protecting Eli with her body like a shield made of professionalism. "If you touch this door," the lawyer called out, stepping in closer, "you are obstructing medical access and interfering with witness statements from minors, on camera." Norton's jaw flexed. He looked around the lot, searching for the old power reflex. One order, one threat, and people backed down. Nobody backed down. The crowd of riders didn't surge, they didn't shout, they just held their positions, phones steady, faces forward, creating a circle that felt like a courtroom with engines. Dorothy tried to reclaim the narrative, voice climbing into her fundraiser tone. "This is outrageous," she said, palms up. "A child said something nonsensical because he's sick and frightened. Sheriff, please." The nurse snapped her head toward Dorothy. "Stop talking," she said sharply. "This child is in respiratory distress and you're trying to manage optics. Step away from the van." Dorothy blinked, offended. Then her eyes went to Noah, still on Tank's bike, still frozen. Noah felt it. The look that promised consequences later, the same look that had controlled him his whole life. But later wasn't guaranteed anymore, because Marisol spoke again, louder this time, not strong, but clear. "They take the kids at night," she said from the doorway. "They say it's adoption, they say it's transfer, but we never see them again." A ripple moved through the riders, a soundless collective shift of weight, the kind that said, "We heard you. We believe you." Reed's voice cut in, low and razor-edged. "Sheriff, you want to do your job? Then do it. Call state services right now." Norton's eyes narrowed. "I don't take orders from—" "Then take them from the law," the lawyer said, holding his phone out. "I'm dialing State Child Protective Services and the State Health Hotline right now, this minute. You can stand here and be recorded refusing to cooperate, or you can join the call and pretend you're doing what you should have done months ago." He hit speaker. The ringtone sounded impossibly normal in that empty lot, like the world outside still believed in rules. Dorothy's composure finally fractured. She stepped toward Norton, voice low and urgent. "Clay," she hissed, "don't let him do this." Norton didn't answer her. His eyes were locked on the phones pointed at him. The call connected. "This is the State Child Welfare Hotline," a voice said through the speaker. "How can I help you?" The lawyer didn't hesitate. He spoke clearly, methodically, like someone reading a report that couldn't be laughed off. "I'm attorney Daniel Klein. I'm reporting an active child transport occurring behind the old mill lot off County Route 6. 2 vans, multiple minors inside. A registered nurse on scene treating a child in respiratory distress named Eli. The transport has no verified receiving facility. Sheriff Clay Norton is present." There was a pause on the line, just long enough to mean the operator understood the wait. "Are the children safe right now?" the operator asked. The nurse answered loud. "They are safer than they were, but they were locked in a van and one child is medically compromised." "Do not move the children," the operator said immediately. "Law enforcement must secure the scene. We are dispatching an emergency response team." The words hung in the mist like a net dropping. Norton's face went hard. He reached for his radio, and for the first time that night, he sounded like a man who knew he'd lost control of the story. "Dispatch," he said, voice clipped. "I need county units to the old mill lot, now." Dorothy's head snapped toward him. "Clay," he didn't look at her, he didn't have to. The cameras did. Bishop stepped closer to Tank's bike and looked up at Noah. "You did that," he said quietly. Noah's throat tightened. I didn't." "You spoke," Bishop said. "That's enough." Noah stared at Eli in the van doorway, at the nurse's hands, at the way Eli's breathing was finally easing. His eyes burned. Then the sirens came. Not a lot at first, one, then another, then several, growing louder. County cars rolled in, lights strobing across the riders' helmets and the rusted mill walls. Deputies stepped out fast, hands hovering near holsters, like they were trained to see bikers as the problem. Then they saw the vans. They saw the kids. They saw the nurse. They saw the lawyer holding a live call on speaker. And the deputy's posture shifted. Confusion, then calculation, then caution. Because this wasn't a bar fight. This was a scene that would be replayed. Norton walked toward the arriving deputies, voice low, trying to reclaim command. But the lawyer followed, staying close enough for his phone to catch every word. "No one leaves," the lawyer said, loud enough for everyone. "Not the vans, not the staff, not the sheriff. This is now a child welfare matter with medical neglect indicators." Dorothy's face tightened into fury. She took one step back toward the second van, eyes darting like she wanted to escape. Reed saw it. He didn't grab her. He didn't touch her. He just lifted his phone higher and said calmly, "Dorothy Harlan is attempting to leave the scene." Dorothy froze mid-step. Norton snapped, "Stop it!" But it was too late. The crowd had heard. The deputies had heard. The cameras had heard. A state vehicle arrived next, unmarked but official. Then another. People in jackets with badges stepped out, moving with a different kind of authority, one that didn't answer to a small-town sheriff's smile. A woman with a state ID approached the vans, eyes scanning the children, the locks, the cramped interior. "Who authorized this transport?" she asked. Dorothy inhaled, about to speak. The state worker didn't even look at her. She looked at the nurse. "Medical condition?" "Respiratory distress," the nurse said, "and I suspect prolonged neglect. He should have been treated days ago." The state worker's gaze sharpened. "We're taking custody," she said. "Right now." Dorothy's voice finally cracked through, sharp and desperate. "You can't. These children are under my facility." The state worker turned then, eyes cold. "Ma'am, step back. You are not in control of this anymore." Dorothy's face twisted and the mask fell completely. "After everything I've done," the state worker didn't blink. "Step back." Dorothy looked around, searching for Norton, for the sheriff's protection. Norton's face was stone, because now the town's eyes were on him too, and the town was starting to understand what kind of man he was. One by one, the van doors were opened fully. Kids were helped down into the cold night, blankets placed around shoulders, hands held, names asked gently, not barked. The nurse stayed with Eli as he was lifted carefully into the back of an ambulance that had arrived quietly and parked close. Noah watched, shaking, as Eli was moved. Eli's eyes found him one last time. Eli's voice was barely there. Noah? Noah leaned forward on Tank's seat, tears finally breaking free. "I'm here," he choked out. Eli's eyelids fluttered. You didn't forget." Noah shook his head hard. "Never." Eli's lips twitched like he was trying to smile, then he was gone behind the ambulance doors. Dorothy Harlan stood beside her van, surrounded now, not by bikers but by state workers and deputies who suddenly didn't want to stand too close to her. She looked smaller without the room believing her. The state worker turned to a deputy. "Detain her." Dorothy's mouth opened in outrage. "This is insane. Clay." Norton didn't move. The deputy hesitated for 1 second, then stepped forward and took Dorothy's arm. Dorothy flinched like she'd never imagined being touched by consequences. Norton's eyes met Bishop's across the lot. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Norton looked away first. Because he knew what Bishop knew, it didn't matter what Norton said now. The evidence was recorded. The kids were seen. The vans were real. The lie had cracked in public. By the time the sky began to lighten at the horizon, gray shifting toward pale, more motorcycles were arriving, not to fight, but to stand. A line of engines rolled in and parked along the road like a boundary nobody could cross without being noticed. When St. Margaret's Gate finally came into view again later that morning, state vehicles leading, ambulances and deputies behind, riders in the distance like a silent escort, the sun was just starting to rise. And there it was. What Noah could never have imagined when he was shaking behind a dumpster the night before. Motorcycles, hundreds of them, lined up along the road outside St. Margaret's, stretching farther than Noah could see, engines idling low like an ocean. Not a gang, not an army. A wall of witnesses. The gate stayed shut for a moment, like the building itself was hoping this would pass. Then the chain was cut. The gate swung open. The gate. And for the first time, St. Margaret's looked less like a home and more like what it really was, a place built to hide things. State workers went in, kids came out. In the yard, some of the smaller ones blinked at the sunrise like they'd forgotten it existed. Some clung to each other. Some stared at the bikes like they were monsters, until a rider took off his helmet, knelt down, and spoke softly like a human. Noah stood near the road, wrapped in a borrowed jacket someone had put around his shoulders without asking. His hands shook from cold and shock and the fact that he could finally breathe. Bishop approached him slowly. No big speech, no performance. He held out something small, a folded piece of paper. Noah's breath caught. "My list," Bishop shook his head. "Not the same one," he said quietly. "That one's burned." Noah's throat tightened. Bishop held the paper steady anyway. "But the names weren't," he said. "You wrote them once, you can write them again. And this time, people will read them." Noah took the paper with trembling fingers. He looked at the sunrise, the bikes, the state cars, the kids being guided into warmth, the orphanage finally exposed in daylight. And the strangest thing happened. For the first time in his life, Noah wasn't hungry. Not because his stomach was full, because the fear that used to eat him from the inside finally had nowhere to hide. His fingers closed around the pencil Bishop placed in his palm. Noah looked down at the blank page. Then he began writing the first name.